Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the school committee. We have a fairly lengthy docket, so why don't we go ahead and get started? Let's begin with administrative business, consent agenda. Would someone like to move the consent agenda? Thank you, Suzanne. Is there a second? Thank you, Stephen. Stephen, your vote. Suzanne?
Yes.
Hey, David, us in Zoom land can't hear you. We in Zoom land. Apologies to all the English teachers. A little bit better. You were really loud and then.
All right, hopefully this works better.
That's better, thanks.
Val, your vote on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
All right. Is there anyone else on, Robin? For school committee members? Okay. All right, so that brings us to the student report with Laura Cleaves.
Hello, everyone. A lot of things have happened in the past 2 weeks at Brookline High School. A lot of exciting things, a lot of celebratory things, but also a lot of serious things that definitely need to be brought to light. So with that, I will be starting my presentation. Hopefully folks can hear on Zoom as well.
Can the Zoom people hear Laura? Or even me? Can anyone hear anybody?
Laura,
Yes.
if you talk closer to the mic, I think will be better.
Oh, should I talk louder?
That's good. I think.
Yeah,
Okay, great.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, yes. So this is our school committee student report. Robin? Sorry for the brief delay. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, so to start things off on a lighter note, BHS has been doing very well in terms of sports. The fall seasons have ended, and the boys varsity team went to the playoffs. Unfortunately, we lost against St. John's, but the effort is still very much appreciated. Much more positive news, the girls varsity soccer team is going to D1 quarterfinals, the final 16, sorry for the typo, and we won 3-1 yesterday against the Woburn Tanners. So if you know anyone who is on the Brookline High School girls varsity soccer team, please make sure to congratulate them for a very nice job well done. The cross-country varsity team is top 3 in the state for both boys and girls. So if you know anyone on the cross-country team, definitely make sure to congratulate them. And in terms of the MSRPA, the crew teams won their championships in public school regatta, and we would just like to congratulate all athletes for a very nice job well done. So in a more serious turn of events, we had an evacuation at BHS on November 3rd. It was definitely quite the event, caused by a chemical irritant at the school, particularly in the cafeteria. At 11:47 a.m., students and staff were evacuated due to the chemical irritant. Obviously, getting everyone out of the way was of the utmost importance. At 1:12 p.m., after waiting for a couple of hours, Headmaster Meyer officially dismissed the school for the day. And the end of Q1 was delayed by 1 school day thanks to the entire incident. And 2 students and 2 staff members were unfortunately hospitalized, making this event very, very serious and obviously one that brought the school community together, albeit under unfortunate circumstances. However, we were able to make some lemonade out of lemons, and today we had a lockdown drill. What this entailed was basically during T block, which is our advisory block where students around the school are able to meet with the other students and have a place to debrief away from the stress of school. We were able to have our lockdown drill there today. It was approximately an hour long and it included 4 components. such as the drill, which was approximately 10 minutes where students and staff hunkered down in a classroom to simulate what the experience would be like if we did have a lockdown. Then we went through an instructional video made by assistant head of school Hal Mason, who introduced the OBR response, or the options-based response. Three components of that response would be the importance of knowing when to run, when to hide and barricade, and knowing how to defend yourself when the situation arises. And then we did circle rounds and advisory where students were able to debrief their emotions, because quite clearly being in a lockdown is a very stressful event, and we want to make sure that even though this event did simulate some of the stress and anxiety students would feel, that they would have a space where they could express that and be reassured by the fact that when things like these could happen, when things like these inevitably do happen, we do have a plan in place to make sure that all students are safe. And then finally, students and staff were able to ask questions to assistant head of school Hal Mason and head of school Anthony Meyer to kind of assuage more fears other than the circle round. So that was very productive, and also it gave students the chance to feel safe. And I think that that's definitely something we want to really encourage in school. I did talk to a couple of students about how their experiences went during the evacuation and during the lockdown drill. I got a lot of feedback on how it was for students. Many students wanted to emphasize the role of mental health in kind of addressing the incident of what happened on the evacuation day. But the lockdown drill for many was helpful in many respects. Evangeline Canaris, a junior at Brookline High School, whose pronouns are she, her, says that she feels a lot safer now that she knows what to do. And she feels as if we need to do more drills and more evacuations to make sure that we have a plan in place, which is great to hear. And Anastasia Kunica, who is also a junior at Brookline High School, would really like the school to find whoever did this, because she still has a cough caused by the chemical irritant. She was in the cafeteria the day the entire evacuation went down. And she notes that people were harmed and families deserve to know who did this, and that it was an attack on the entire school. Yes. But we are still trying to make the best of the situation that we're in. We are approaching the end. We have approached the end of Q1. We're in Q2. We're in a different headspace, and we're really going to try and make the best of the situation and really bring ourselves together as a community more than we already are right now, and try to get through this, because that's what school is all about. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Laura. Do school committee members have any questions or comments? Suzanne?
Yeah, I would just, Laura, like to kind of check in. Did they mention the availability of the counselors and the social workers, in case there was such a situation?
Well, I can't recall Anthony Meyer or Hal Mason mentioning that during their webinar. I will note that they have sent an extensive amount of emails reassuring students of steps they can take in order to ensure that their mental health is in a good place after what happened on Thursday of last week.
Yeah.
And they've been in really close contact with everyone.
Thank you.
Stephen?
This is for Laura as well as for Dr. Guillory. What is the evacuation policy for VHS? If VHS has to be evacuated in the middle of the day, is there a location to which students can be evacuated in the event that they can't be picked up midday or that they can't get home midday?
So the policy or the practice is initially to go to the Cypress Field. The unfortunate circumstance that we have in Brookline is that BHS is sort of the largest facility in the town, so evacuating 2,000 or 2,100 students to any one place, that's not a reality. But we are looking to say, where can we break students up or take them to, like OLS? Can we bring folks to St. Mary's, the Unitarian Church, and those types of things? So the high school is actually in the process of shoring up those plans, because right now the plan is Cypress Field, but that's only if the weather is permitting. And so this was part of the discussion that we had after the options-based drill today. And I'll get into a little bit of this during my report on it, because I was at the high school for the drill too as well.
Anyone else? Any of our school committee members on Zoom have questions or comments?
No.
All right, well, thank you very much, Laura. As always, it was very informative and in-depth, and we greatly appreciate it. That brings us to the superintendent's report. I kind of like it. Yeah.
All right. Val, Helen, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Linus. Yes.
All right, so tonight what we want to do is walk through some upcoming events, talk about our staff professional development day, share some PSB highlights, and walk through some superintendent school visits, and then get to our spotlight on excellence. So tomorrow, all schools and district offices will be closed for Veterans Day. Originally called Armistice Day, it marked the end of World War I on November 11th, 1918. Veterans Day is an annual observance used to honor and celebrate those who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces. We especially salute and honor the PSB parents, guardians, and caregivers of our 34 students who are active military veterans, are currently active in the service, and we certainly want to acknowledge our community at large, those members of veteran or active duty, as well as all of those who've made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our country. PSB and the town of Brookline continue to hold flu and COVID vaccine clinics. There are a few coming up. The next one is at Ruffin Ridley, Saturday, November 19th. And the next COVID vaccine clinic will be held at Pierce, Monday, November 28th. And we want to give a shout out to our FRR nurse, Brianna, BEEP nurse, Deb, BHS nurses, Megan and Jill, for helping on the Brookline Health Department flu clinic on Saturday, November 5th. Over 255 individuals, many of which were PSB students, received their flu shot. Suzanne and I had the opportunity to attend the Massachusetts Association of School Committees and Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents annual joint conference down in Hyannis, November 2nd through 5th. And many of the, I can find my note here. I was going to share with you some of the sessions that I attended, and then ask Suzanne if she wants to talk a little bit about her experience there. But I would say overall, the conference was very worthwhile. It was an opportunity to network and collaborate with colleagues across the state, as well as get up to date on some of the things that are happening nationally, so within the state here. So Wednesday, the sessions I attended were basics of policy. I attended a session on the electrification of school bus fleets, a couple of sessions on financial oversight, and then we had the keynote address from Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley. Thursday, the keynote address was Understanding the Student Mental Health Crisis, Causes, Impacts, and Solutions. I attended a session on early college, a strategy for increasing equity and post-secondary attainment, and then a session on building leadership at the central office level. Friday's sessions opened with the keynote address on leading and implementing equity with intentionality, how to navigate polarizing issues, what school business officers want school committee members to know, and heating up, how schools can combat extreme heat with equitable access to modern air conditioning. And then Saturday, the two sessions I attended were effective meetings, planning and implementation, and is my state aid going up? The Student Opportunity Act, Target Share, and Hold Harmless. And so again, like I said, it was a well worth the time down in Hyannis to engage with other superintendents and school committee members. Suzanne?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it really was worthwhile. It's really helpful to be in a room with hundreds of people who are school committee members and superintendents, because they know what we go through on at least a monthly basis, if not a daily basis. And so it's just affirming that the work is hard, that it's hard for everybody, but that it's so worthwhile and it's just worth doing. And so it just makes you feel like, yeah, this is the work we're doing. And we're not alone out there, and there are lots of people trying to make this work. I will say Jeff Riley said that he wasn't so interested in test scores, which I was a little surprised to hear from him, and suggested we should have more play and joy in our schools. So I was like, okay, Commissioner Riley, go right on. And then the other thing, just to let you know, to give you the feedback, on the resolutions, I think there were 6 of them, all of them passed. So that's not how I voted, because I voted the way the school committee asked me to vote, but they did all pass. So, you know, if you want to know more details about that, they actually passed easily. So that's the group that was. Yeah, I went to many of the same sessions, and then I went to a few on my own. I mean, we split up at some times, and there's some interesting things coming down the road with special ed, special services. So we'll get an update on that as that's coming into law. I think it started one particular one on inter-team agencies started, I think, on Monday. So we'll get more information about that. Do you know about that, David? Maybe not. Okay. And yeah, any details you might want to know, just ask. But it really is, I think, a worthwhile conference. It was well attended, and the speakers were good. They were good speakers.
Suzanne, you mentioned that all 6 resolutions passed. Is that fairly typical?
Yeah.
It is. It's a what do I want to say? The people who come are the people who tend to be a little more progressive, and they tend to, yes, that often happens. I think the last couple ones I've attended, last couple of years, they've passed the resolutions. I will say, for instance, there were a few dissenters on one of ours, which was on the financial literacy, and the concern was that it would be an unfunded mandate, just as we said that. But that was, so there were a handful of us that voted that one down, as your wishes here. But they all passed pretty easily, actually. That's not unusual. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. Next is a summary, and I think Laura did a nice job on this, so I won't take us through this part again, but I think the part that I do want to highlight is that the BHS team is the last line there, is committed to continuous improvement and is engaging in after-action reviews. And as Laura talked about, the options-based drill that occurred today, today was one of my scheduled visits at the high school, and this was a coordinated effort between the high school team as well as Brookline Police, and the simulation, and many of the students may not have seen this, but we had the police officers were in the building, but many of them actually drove up as if the emergency was in full bloom. So meaning coming up with lights and those types of things, not the sirens. But Anthony, head of school Myers, went on, announced that this is a drill. And at that moment, he directed the entire school to go into lockdown mode. And within seconds, it was as if no one was in the high school. So I think he will share out additional information with the high school community about that. But I do believe that the event, as Laura has already articulated, was one that helped students understand what they should do in these moments of crises. And then it also gives opportunities to do dry runs and say, where can we actually improve? What are additional improvements that we can make in terms of what folks have scheduled?
Go ahead, Suzanne.
Yeah, I just, Dr. Giller, if you could just kind of reiterate that for the public to know that a decision is not made by one person.
Oh,
that,
yes.
That head of school, Meyer, has lots of people, the police, as you said, the police, the fire, public health, many people who weigh in on, you know, what needs to happen. Now, I mean, in the moment, he has to make the decision, but when it comes to things like dismissing the students and calling the shots on some of this, he does have input. He's not alone in that.
And I think in this case in particular, because again, we were down at Hyannis, he certainly reached out to me and said, you know, we have a situation that's unfolding in the high school, and he kept me apprised as well as the movement that was occurring. But the initial thinking was, how do we get students back in? But when we couldn't identify what the chemical irritant was, there was additional reinforcement that was called in, and that additional reinforcement with Boston Hazmat. And so at that moment, it elevates even further. And then certainly the Department of Health weighs in and says, at this point, we don't think it's a good idea for folks to go back in. And so there are a number of real-time decisions that are made right in the moment. And that emphasis, in addition to what you've shared, Suzanne, that additional emphasis is on taking care of the scene, the students that are right there in front of them, and making sure that everyone is safe. And so this idea of questions around what do we do if we need to evacuate, where do we go? Those plans are going to be reinforced and re-examined to make sure that we do have options there. And so with, again, a campus of that size, we just have to think about, it's not saying, okay, all ninth graders go to OLS, all 10th graders, because everyone is intermixed. And so it's not as just simple as a cohort model in that sense. So the team has some additional work to do there.
Helen?
Oh, thank you. I was actually going to comment on the MASS annual conference and second what Suzanne was saying about it's a very interesting conference, and it's a time for us to, now that we no longer have EDCO, for us to be able to hear some of the people speak and to get together with other, school committee members from other districts. It's a real, a lot of learning that happens there. And so I highly recommend it. Also, I just wanted to ask one quick question about the fleet electrification. Is there a chance for us?
You want to tell?
From what you were hearing, Dr. Guillory?
You can tell.
I don't think there's a chance right now, but we can certainly begin to do contacts. I mean, they gave us contacts, but they want it to be larger fleets, and they want them to be urban for the most
Right,
part.
that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Okay,
just for
that's
the, down the road, Helen, we'll keep on it, but
Yeah,
I don't think today or tomorrow we're going to get it.
okay. I was just curious if there was something new.
Stephen?
Okay, back to this. Dr. Guillory, what further communication, if any, should we expect on this incident? And could you say a little something about what kinds of communication you can and can't issue in situations like this? I had several parents come up to me and ask me for specifics about this incident, and of course I shared that I had what they had. So just, I think, some general guidance about what in general can and cannot be communicated in situations like these as a guideline could be helpful for the public.
So each incident is certainly unique, but there's a bar of what's happening in the moment. And so again, the immediate emphasis is taking care of the school community right then and there. And then the broader question becomes is then how then do we get our parents aware of what's happening on the ground as well? And so I certainly have heard some feedback about some things that we could certainly improve, and maybe using the robocall system so that parents are learning or hearing about the information from us rather than the news media. But I think we also have to be honest with ourselves to say that the moment that an incident occurs anywhere, text messages start going out. So you're not going to get in front of those types of communications, but still that expectation around how then do we communicate with the parent community at large. And so those are some opportunities to improve upon. I think I would say if you'd asked me what I would do if I were the high school principal, the head of school at that moment, I think I would have followed a similar pattern of head of school Myers. I would have been taking care of on the scene those that are in front of me. And certainly in this case, we had individuals that had to be transported. So now that's another item that's on my radar. And then after the fact, then I'm communicating out, here's what transpired in that sense. So
I'm actually not talking about the urgency of communications. I'm just talking about the substance of communications. What can and can't be communicated in situations like this?
Well, I think just in terms of we communicate what we know. right? And at that moment, we communicated out the information that we had, and I think there were several subsequent communications after that Anthony sent out to the high school community as such. So again, there isn't anything that we're trying to hide or hold back. We're sharing the information that we have, but the thing that we don't want to do is communicate information that's inaccurate. And so there's also that piece that goes into it. So.
Well, just and then the first part of my question: will there be any communication on after the fact on what the substance is, if it's learned, or whether the perpetrator has been identified, even if that perpetrator's identity isn't made public after a certain period of time?
Yeah. So that we will do those types of things. I think the reality of and with hazmat on the scene, and they couldn't get a hit on what the substance was. I think that part, those professionals would have to give us guidance on that. But certainly an ongoing investigation is happening right now to try to identify the folks that engaged in this.
Jennifer?
This is really helpful, and there was a number of communications that came from the high school. I think for high school families, that was really helpful. And I actually think that now, when listening to this part of this conversation, the notes that I had that I wanted to share may have in part been covered, but as part of that follow-up, that idea of continuous sort of reflection and review, I just did want to put in a 2-cent sort of just to consider how we can communicate, knowing that the priority is making sure that the kids are safe, that all of our staff is safe, is certainly the priority. And then, as you said, once we have sort of that piece under control, how can we communicate with students and families to know whether it's a dismissal or we're going to stay, and just sort of, reviewing that part of the plan so that students and families know what's happening. Also acknowledging, as you said, that we're not going to get ahead of text messages that are coming from students to home, but what does a plan like that look like in this day of technology, and how can we improve on that? And I think you said in this that all of the members who went to the hospital are all doing well at this time. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I just want to check in, Dr. Guillory. Does each school, each facility have a safety plan? So they each have an evacuation plan and a lockdown plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And part of this is we've, I think back in 2019, prior to the pandemic, schools were going through these trainings. The pandemic certainly interrupted that, and so we've reactivated these types of trainings and these partnerships with both fire and police.
Thank you.
Following up on Suzanne's question just now, who has access to those plans? Each building principal has that? Are
Yes.
they posted somewhere?
Those plans are principals are aware of those, staff are trained on those, but the contents of those plans need to be kept confidential.
Right, that's understandable. Jennifer?
I just wanted to ask, have all the schools gone through options-based training, or is it just the high school?
Oh, no, I think the high school it's scheduled now, and I think Baker is the one that's next on the queue, but most of them have actually are going through it or have gone through it already. But again, it's not a one and done.
Right.
These will be ongoing.
Thank you.
I just wanted to underscore a point that you made, Dr. Guillory, about the importance that in the substance of the message, that we not get ahead of the facts that are known, and in addition to that, not engage in speculation. Very often, members of the community will want perhaps an idea about what the current thinking is, but even that can be a bit risky because the current thinking can change based upon the circumstances and what we find out later. So sometimes it may be frustrating for members of the community to feel that a message might be a little more bare than they would like, but that's really the most prudent course of action, because you don't want to be encouraging speculation or accusations.
And to that point, that's exactly what our police partners share today, even going through the options-based training, is that at a given moment, a particular plan may be a good idea, but once you get out, you may say, well, let's evacuate this way. You may get out there and find another deterrent and have to change course in that. So that's very true. And the other thing that I'll say about the options-based training that students occurred is not just for school. These were skills that can be utilized in other places. And so the idea is, how do we maintain awareness wherever we are? All right. Tuesday, we hosted a district-wide professional development day at Brookline High School, and Laura and several other students served as dossiers for folks traveling through the high school for the first time. This year's program featured a presentation from racial justice educator and writer Debbie Irving. Ms. Irving helped educators explore the harmful patterns in their lives and how anti-racism can be weaved into everyday practice. And so we want to certainly thank Janae Utaro, as well as Hey Young Ko, and Betsy, and many, many others that made, Betsy Fitzpatrick, that made the Staff Development Day come together. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Janae to share a few additional details about the November 8th PD Day.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Guillory. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you. I just want to say we had a great time coming back together as a full district. It's been several years since we've had a chance to do that for PD Day. People might remember in 2016, we hosted Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum. And then in 2017, we hosted Dr. Phil Lee from Harvard University, and also Jamie Almanson from California and the Equity Collaborative. So it's been a while. And absolutely, it was great to have everybody together. We were able to train 53 amazing educators from across the district. And I mean, from paraprofessionals to principals, you name it, to facilitate and lead breakout discussion groups to debrief Debbie Irving's talk after her 75-minute presentation. Debbie Irving was also one of the breakout group facilitators. We had a great day, and then schools were able to, the pre-K to 8 school educators were able to return to their buildings to have lunch, and then to continue some afternoon work. The other couple things that I'll share that we loved about the day, we did several evaluations, and our evaluations keep updating in real time. But for example, I had 210 respondents over the last couple of days affirm at 97% that Debbie Irving's talk and the morning session of PD Day was extremely useful and relevant to their practice. So 97% is a pretty huge number. And then we also were able to engage in what Irving's team calls the 21-day racial equity challenge. And this is just an opportunity for the duration of the month of November to continue the work and the learning. So that means, listening to a podcast on, day 9, or, following a racial justice leader or a social justice leader. And obviously this is about all of our intersecting identities. And so for 21 days, taking us through the end of November, we have had over the last couple of days, 143 educators commit to engaging in this work. So our district is following up in the action work on the heels of what we received from Debbie Irving. So we're super excited about that commitment. A number of more people were picking up the book, and it's just really sort of engaged the entire community and working together and coming together to think about white supremacy work, anti-racism work, anti-bias work, et cetera. So we're really excited, and I'm happy to answer any questions if people have them.
Any questions? I do have one. So there's a mention that Ms. Irving helped educators explore the harmful patterns in their lives. Can you go into a little more detail about the harmful patterns and what that entailed?
So her talk was very personal. By the way, Dr. Guillory gave a sort of opened up the morning with a beautiful introduction and some storytelling for himself, and our districts loved that. And it was a great way to set up for Debbie Irving, who really personalized her experiences. And so she shared about the fact that she was socialized on a narrow worldview, as a child and growing up. And so she explored in her talk how she spent decades silently reaffirming harmful, archaic racial patterns instead of questioning the racial disparities and tensions that she could see and feel. And so a lot of the orientation of the workshop was geared toward educators and helping to support educators as human beings in making that sort of paradigm shift from helping or fixing those believed to be inferior, that kind of thing. It was quite the history lesson and quite the sort of, again, a workshop model to just sort of frame, here's the backstory, here's the history that brings us to this point, and here's some of the things that we can think about learning more and then moving forward in action around social justice to support and serve our students and one another. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Stephen?
Janae, how were the faculty members selected for the PD?
You mean to be the facilitators?
No, to be the participants.
So every
This was for everyone.
the entire district. This was professional development day for the entire district.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah. It was a great way to sort of come and learn together, come together. And we just got so much feedback about the power of the breakout groups afterward. Many people said an hour is not enough time to debrief, and just a lot of good energy, especially again, post-COVID, being able to come together.
I think at some future date, you might be able to share out some of that feedback. What was
Sure.
it? Did you do like post surveys?
Yeah, we did.
That'd be
I
great.
shared some of
really
it this
interested to see
morning.
Some of the surveys, yeah.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, 97% of the folks who've responded so far found the workshop and the learning to be extremely useful and relevant to their practice.
That's great.
Thank you, Janae. Next up, several schools celebrated community traditions, including a puppet show. Beep had a puppet show, Pumpkin Fest, and then the annual Japanese fair, as well as several Halloween celebrations. We also celebrated the retirement of BHS Chinese teacher Miss Li Hua Shorter and the creation of the AAPI book collection at the BHS library. PSB also began their first set of parent-teacher conferences with grades K through 5. So you see a few pictures representing those activities. I'm trying to make up time now because I know we're running long and we have our students waiting to present to us next. Recently completed my Superintendent Day visits, and what I tried to do here is to denote with an asterisk on the date the full days at the schools. So I had a full day at Lawrence and Runkle, and then the visit that I had today was my standard 2-hour visit with the school leader that happened to be during the options-based drill time. But at Lawrence, I was roped into a kindergarten classroom, and I was playing a game of can you guess my name and can you spell my name? So that was interesting. And then at Runkle, I did. I'm pretty good. But I had to have some good clues. And then at Runkle, I went into a kindergarten classroom there, and a kid looks up at me and he says, "You look like a basketball player. Are you related to Shaq?" Basically, he was saying I look like Shaq. I said, "Well, that's a new one. So you should thinking about my brother. Now he looks like Shaq." But then it was we were playing a pattern game, and then students came over and said, "Well, can you come and sit with us at our table and play with us?" So it's just those moments that that agency that you see in students that's so remarkable. And then several shots: Lincoln School, FRR, Lawrence, and then some activities at Pumpkin Fest. But again, upcoming, I have Driscoll, FRR, Baker, and Pierce. And Baker and Pierce are my next 2 full-day visits. And again, that's an opportunity for me to be there at morning drop-off through dismissal, engaging with families, students, and certainly our faculty and staff. So it's a great learning for me to understand more immensely the cultures within each school. And now we get to one other thing that I was going to say is this Sunday, there's the 5th grade spelling bee at BHS at 1 o'clock for all of those that may want to participate in that. And I'll certainly report out on that at our next school committee meeting. At this time, we want to shine the spotlight on excellence on Heath School affinity groups. It's my pleasure to welcome Heath School educators and students to the meeting tonight so that we can shine the spotlight on excellence on the affinity groups. One of PSB's core values is respect for human differences, and the affinity groups at Heath School are a perfect example of how to make those words authentic in our school communities. Heath School is proud of their popular and thriving affinity groups, including Metco Connections, Asian AAPI, Gender Sexuality Alliance, Rainbow Club, and the African American and Latino Scholars, Young Scholars. Individually, each of these affinity groups provide students with an important connection to school for collaboration and support. Yeah, I'll turn the microphone now to Dr. Sevelius, who will introduce us to the teachers at Heath and the students that have joined us this evening to tell us more about their affinity groups. Thank you.
Great. Oh, thank you so much. And thank you to, I have 3 students here tonight and 3 teachers, so hopefully they'll, turn on their video so you can see their faces as well. I have 3 8th grade students, Ishara Bimani, Meredith Richardson, and Sophie Ugalde are all here. And then 3 Heath staff members, Karen Joshua, our grade 2 teacher, Tatiana Beckwith, grade 4, and then Kristen Wheeler, who's one of our literacy coaches. And all of us participate really fully and maybe oftentimes multiple affinity groups, depending on kind of where that intersection in our own lives lay. And so I did have a presentation that I sent to Robin. I don't know if that's able to be shared, but I'm going to just jump in with why affinity groups. And this work has been happening at Heath for some time now, especially with our Metco Connections and Young Scholars program, and then our GSA. And every year we're looking on what else do we need to add based on who's in front of us, who the kids are in our care. But, working this year with Janae has been really powerful too. And of course, Hey Young, who jumped right in to help co-facilitate our AAPI group, which launched this fall. But using some of the language that Janae shared with me and other people in the district this summer was around how are we defining affinity groups? And so I'll just share that definition with you here, and then I'm going to turn it over to the kids. But we define affinity groups as spaces where individuals who share a common identity can come together for collaboration and support. These commonalities are typical aspects that are unchangeable components of identity, such as race, ethnicity, national origin, gender, sexuality, language, ability, status, family structure, etc. Affinity groups are most often useful for identities who have been historically silenced or marginalized, as historic and contemporary oppression can result in feelings of isolation in typical workplaces and educational environments. School-based affinity groups are often designated as safe spaces for folks to share how the affinity identity impacts their role in the educational setting, as well as working towards some common mission or goal along those lines. And sometimes with students, the common mission and goal is to get together and celebrate. And sometimes it's to put on a show, and sometimes it's to raise money. So that's defined within that affinity space. And the kids can talk more about their experiences too. But we also want to be able to eventually have it so that the absence of individuals who identify differently is often what creates that sense of safety for the group members, right? We want it to be truly affinity for affinity, led by affinity members, and really this self-generating group. And so that's our goal. We're not there yet, but we're getting there. So I know there may be questions along the way, so I just ask that you hold those. We have our 3 students, Ishara, Meredith, and Sophie. And so I'll ask Ishara to jump in with her perspective on the groups.
Hi, my name is Ishara Bamani. I'm an 8th grader at Heath School, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And at our school, we do have a couple of different affinity groups. The ones that I participate in are our AAPI, which is Asian American Pacific Islander group, and our GSA, Gender Sexuality. And I me personally, I believe that having affinity groups in a school setting is really important because it gives our students, like Dr. Saveli said, an opportunity to just connect with peers who may have grown up exposed to similar traditions, holidays, and lifestyles that are formed due to ethnicity, race, and background. And in our AIPI group, which am a part of, I'm given the opportunity to just talk about my experiences with people who are also from a similar background. I am Indian American, and there are a few other Indian Americans in our AIPI group who I'm able to just connect with and share experiences with and talk about my personal backgrounds and experiences. But I also like having other Asian backgrounds in the group because it allows me to learn more about other cultures while being in a safe space where we can talk and learn and educate ourselves. Another thing that I really love about our AAPI group is that we're always just learning about different cultures and we're always thinking, what can we do to learn more? And I think that that's really important because that's the whole point, is to connect people and learn and to just feel like you're in a community where you're accepted and safe and seen. And that's how this AAPI group has really made me feel. I also enjoy being in GSA because as a young LGBTQ person, having people who grow up or with similar experiences, like I said before, and also having just that similar journey of finding yourself that you're able to learn about and share with others is really special. And I probably wouldn't have even talked about it with anyone if there wasn't a GSA at our school. And being in these affinity groups has really allowed me to broaden my knowledge of other people's lives and also given me an outlet to express my experiences as a young LGBTQ person of color. And I've also just made a lot of friends in these groups. And it has overall just been a truly fun experience and an amazing opportunity that I will be sure to remember for the rest of my life.
Meredith, did you want to jump in and share your experiences?
Yeah, so I'm Meredith, and I am also in 8th grade at Heath, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am also a member of the Heath GSA and AAPI affinity group. I especially appreciate having affinity groups at Heath because there's a fair amount of diversity here, but not as many opportunities to formally highlight that diversity and connect with our people. The affinity groups I'm a part of have allowed me to share certain perspectives and experiences more freely, knowing that I will be understood. On many occasions, they have allowed me to feel as though, it's not just me feeling these things and experiencing these things. On that note, I especially appreciate some of the discussions that have taken place in the aforementioned affinity groups regarding microaggression and racism, especially. In the best interest of confidentiality, I won't elaborate much further, but believe me when I say that these conversations have not only been remedial, but uplifting. Additionally, the affinity groups at Heath have given me the opportunity to connect and befriend peers with similar backgrounds. I have taken comfort and joy in knowing that some of my fellow students are familiar with my lifestyle and what I'm familiar with. Overall, the affinity groups available at my school have provided a safe space for me and so many others, including Ishar.
Yeah.
So.
And also we have Sophie. Sophie, would you like to jump in?
Sure. Hi, my name is Sophia Ugalde. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm also in 8th grade. Today I stand in front of you to explain what Young Scholars is because I'm in it. I'm very proud to be in it as well. The best way to put is that Young Scholars is a special after-school program where people who don't originate from United States can come together to socialize and get to know each other. Not to mention, we also learn tons about amazing people who have done amazing things like us. And I feel like the most important thing that Young Scholar has to offer is the chance to just share like our origins, our cultures, who we are in general, and we get to learn from each other. I think that my favorite thing about Young Scholars personally is going out on field trips and meeting all kinds of people and doing creative projects. And I also have I asked today a few of my fellow scholars what they thought about Young Scholars. I cannot remember at the top of my head exactly what they said, but I can remember they agreed with me in that they like the chance to be able to share out their origins and cultures, that they like to learn about our cultures from each other, and just in general engage on activities together. Like today, when a Latino came over to our class to share a project, an experiment with seeds, and it was really fun. Everyone had so much fun. At the end of the day, everyone just left with smiles full of joy and energy. And I also have a few images that I can share with my background of projects we've done over the past couple weeks, months. I have, wait, no. I have this, an identity map of culture, age, gender, family, language, and where we're from in general. As you can see, I have my name in this little heart, my family. I speak Spanish, so Español, some Spanish writing. And we also did this really cool self-portrait. This is mine. And yeah, like, I really like Young Scholars, and I really hope it continues to be amazing.
Oh,
Thank you for listening to me.
thank you to all of you, Shara, Meredith, and Sophie. I felt like for a minute there I was crying. So thank you. That's brilliant. So now we have three teachers who I think are going to speak just as passionately, but I think the kids really stole the show already. But I'm going to give it over to Karen, Tatiana, and Kristen to tell their perspectives. We do have over 17 faculty members who facilitate these clubs throughout the school, giving of their time and energy. Just, it's really boundless because they're invested in identifying how to be the most inclusive and strong place for these kids so that they can thrive. So I leave it to you. Karen, would you like to jump in?
Sure. Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. And I want to say a special thank you to Meredith, Ishara, and Sophie. Absolutely. You are exemplars of why we have affinity groups at our school, because part of the reason is that we create amazing student leaders like you. So thank you. I am a second grade teacher, and I'm also the facilitator of the MECO Connections program and Young Scholars program with their colleagues. And for me, affinity groups like the ones we have at our school not only build that sense of connection and community amongst our students, but they also send a really clear message to our students that says, you matter, you have a voice. And in fact, that's why we hear their voices here tonight. I want to highlight, as Sophie did, a number of very important things we've done over the years that I think will be memories for the young scholars at our school forever. So one of the things we do with young scholars is we make a connection with the African American Latinx Scholars Program at the high school with the amazing Stephanie Hunt. We've been pen pals with older and younger students. We've taken field trips to see the high school. We've also done a lot, as Sophie was telling you, having speakers come in or going on field trips. For example, we trekked to the town hall to learn all about the artwork of the amazing, acclaimed Brookline, Boston artist, John Wilson, from his own children, Erica and Roy Wilson. And I believe, Dr. Guillory, you got a chance to see the scholars in action on that field trip as they were learning about art. We learned about small business ownership from Zena Brown, who is the owner of a skincare product company named Brown and Coconuts. And we learned about restaurants and management from Justin Springer, who was a co-owner of Rhythm and Wraps, which and we sampled their delicious food at their ComAv location. All of these speakers or field trips feature speakers and presenters who mirror the identities of our students. And we feel that's a huge priority for our program, that students can see themselves and have role models in front of them. We've heard back from family members and students about how important this is for them. And we do other things, of course, like have very important discussions, as Meredith and Ishara were mentioning, about issues and things that are going on in our building, in the world. And this year we have an amazing grant with a person named Tanya Nixon Silberg, who is a member or who has an organization called Little Uprisings. And we're doing a lot around raising voices and speaking truth. So again, I think these are just a few of the highlights for the Young Scholars Program, but I hope that you all as a school committee and others in the community will continue to fully fund and develop these programs and these affinity groups because the amount of impact is truly profound. So thank you for listening.
Tatiana or Kristen, which one of you would like to share your perspective next? We have 2 more perspectives and then we'll wrap up.
I'll go next since I'm also in Young Scholars. So good evening, my name is Tatiana Beckwith. I'm a 4th grade teacher. I use the pronouns she, her, and ella. And I am a co-leader of the Young Scholars program with Karen. While over the years I've participated in Young Scholars activities, I decided to commit this year to the once-a-week meetings because I really wanted to build a stronger connection with students of color in my building as they move through the grades, and not just if I was lucky enough to have them in my classroom for 4th grade. So even though we've done anti-bias and anti-racist work in our district and our schools for some time now, our students of color just still feel disconnected in our school. And it's no wonder, really, as a teacher of color here, I know how lonely it can feel to be one of a handful only. And indeed, I have benefited myself from being part of affinity groups, both professionally and personally, getting together with people who have similar lived experiences and who can, so we can share and strategize how to maneuver our society. I found it interesting that Suzanne mentioned affinity with the school committee members, right? So that was your affinity group in that case. So we all need this kind of space to feel safe and appreciated. Our young students, they need that too. They need to see one another. They need to work with each other. They need to get the message that they're valued in our community and that they matter to us. And our programming is aiming to give them the experiences to explore their identities together, to see mirrors in their lives, to meet adults in our communities who are successful in various ways. And programs like this one are important and deserve the financial and curricular support so that students of the global majority at all our schools get a top-notch program. One recent afternoon, we asked our group of roughly about 20 to make some acrostic poems using the letters from young scholars going down the side. And one group wrote, "Young scholars, open up, do not give up. Scholars are creative and helpful. Of course, we are loyal and really, really special and smart." Undoubtedly, I know you'll agree that our young scholars are all that and then some. Thank you.
And Kristen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Wheeler. I go by the pronouns she, her, and hers, and I'm a K-2 literacy coach at Heath. So I co-lead the Heath Rainbow Club, and the Rainbow Club is a group for 3rd through 5th graders and our group is like, I wanted to be part of starting the Rainbow Club because I don't identify as a member of the LGBTQ community, but identify as an ally. I was really excited when I heard about it. And then I was even more excited when I found out other people were interested. And I have to say, one of the things that I feel like makes our group super exciting is that the teachers who are running it, we are all just so excited about it. Like, we always have a text thread going, and, we're always coming up with new ideas. So it's a very high energy group of people who lead it, which makes it really fun. And as I said, it's a combination of people who identify as part of the community and people who are allies. And, one of the things that's really important to me, I've been at Heath for a long time, and I think it's a little bit repeating what everybody's always said, but it's just the whole idea of creating a really safe and welcoming space for kids. I can't even tell you. So at the beginning of this year, our first group, we had so many kids that we decided to split the grades. They just came rushing in and were so excited and so full of ideas. I took some notes. Actually, I want to tell about why kids say they want to come to Rainbow Club. There were a lot of kids, and the students have mentioned this, who said they want to come because they want to make friends. Kids talked about they want to learn more. They've heard about LGBTQ. They don't really know what it means. They're not sure. Some kids know a lot about it and want to learn more about the history. One of my favorite things that one of the girls said of why she wants to come, and she said, I come to support my moms. Mm-hmm. And it felt very powerful and simple to her. And I think I think what both Tatiana and Karen said, it's like you getting the message that you belong here, your family belongs here. Some of the projects that we have done have been so fantastic. So I just want to tell you about some of them. I think it was last fall, we did a whole yarn project, and many of you probably saw this if you came by the Heath School. We did yarn art on the front fence, and so many people participated. It became the type of thing where we initiated the time and the place, and we collected yarn. And we planned out with the kids, what kind of messages do we want to do? What kind of art do we want to do? And it became the type of thing where families who were on the playground came and joined in. And again, it's just very, very inclusive. We also do a lot with putting signs around the school for making people feel welcome. We did a big paper chain project last year where we had students visit classrooms, and they brainstormed and had kids come up with positive, inclusive messages. And then we worked together to make paper chains. So the nice thing is, the more that we do the group, the more our activities kind of become student driven. Like when the kids came in this year, they all knew, oh, we really want to do that yarn art again. And oh, we did a thing for Pride Month last year where we had kids go into classrooms and read books. And we did a color day where we organized different grades would wear different colors. And the kids said, oh, let's start planning now for Pride Month. And the kids get very excited. I just want to see if there was one more thing I wanted to say. No, I think I covered everything. Again, thanks so much for having us.
Well, I don't think you covered everything, but you covered a lot. I mean, it really is amazing. We might have 50 to 60 kids show up to Rainbow Club, truly, because it is such a safe space. Certainly at grades 3 through 5, we don't have so many kids who are really tuning into. Some are really tuned in to their, sexual identities, their gender identities, and others are just like, I need to be in a safe space too, right? And so that's what Rainbow Club often comes to, just kids who are seeking connection and safety. And so we're happy to do that. So as the school principal, I'll just share a little bit about why this work is so important to me. you know, and why we're so proud to be a place where we protect and privilege affinity groups. Because while I was growing up, and certainly I'm 50 years old right now, but while growing up, I never had the opportunity to be in affinity with other LGBTQ people. I don't think it's a secret that I'm a member of that community. But it wasn't until college and well into college, actually, that I was like, oh, there are gay people in the world, there are queer people in the world. And so knowing that 40 years ago, nobody really in a school setting had a safe space to be gay other than maybe, you know, the drama club sometimes, or sitting together in the cafeteria with people who look like you or feel like you. Those were the affinity spaces. They were self-created by the people themselves. And so to be more purposeful in that work is something that I take very seriously, and I'm surrounded by people who do as well. These spaces exist in our school, and they're not the only places where they can feel safe and in community, but they are a privilege. And again, they are a special place where we can make sure that we're taking the time and space to do exactly what they need right when they need it. So anyway, thank you all. We know that was long, and we really appreciate the audience and the support emotionally, financially, and spiritually as well. The work with kids is really important. So thank you.
So on behalf of the Public Schools of Brookline, the Spotlight on Excellence is awarded to the Heath students and staff with gratitude for creating and sustaining vibrant, school-based affinity groups that provide safe spaces for collaboration and support with respect for all and in service to the district's core value to honor the diversity and varied perspectives of our school communities. And we have your certificate for the Heath School. Thank you all again for an outstanding job.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Guillory, and everyone on the school committee. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Valerie?
So wonderful to hear. Janae, this may be a question for you while you're on. Is there a gap at all in affinity group participation? I guess, I mean, I'm just trying to think about how the pandemic maybe impacted this, right? So like, I'm thinking of GSA, young scholars, things that start at a particular grade in most schools, maybe not at Heath. Heath is leading the charge clearly, but you know, if there's been a sort of dip in participation because students miss the kind of opening window.
It's hard to say, Val, across the board if that's true. I don't necessarily think it is. I do think that the pandemic is something that, you know, caused a little bit of a blip for us. But by and large, I would say even last year, we really started to get back in swing and in gear with some of these affinity spaces. And certainly, you know, the advisors have changed, the adults leading these have changed, and some of the focus of what the work looks like has changed. But I honestly feel like we're in a good place. And, you know, Dr. Sebelius mentioned the AAPI affinity groups. Those are alive and well at Baker School and FRR. There are other places that are really kind of getting going with some of these things. So I think we're honestly hitting our stride and getting back to where we were in some places and doing better than we were in some places.
That's great to hear. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mariah.
Is this working?
Yes.
Okay. That's better. This is a minor question, but it was interesting to me to hear that Young Scholars at Heath, if I understood it correctly, is targeted towards international students or English language learners. I didn't quite catch. Okay, so is it okay? I see Asa nodding.
So I'll jump in. And Karen's still here. Well, Karen might have left, but it is so the school has the Young Scholars Project, the African American Latino Young Scholars Project. And so this is kind of quite a few years ago, we launched the same program, only kind of the elementary model for it. I think it's still in a couple of schools, but ours was one of the first to launch, and we've sustained it throughout since it launched, which we're really proud of. But it's like an extension or the annex of the high school's really fantastic program.
So it's also for African American and Latino students?
Primarily, yes.
Okay.
Sophie, who presented, also has been, she's an emerging bilingual, fully bilingual at this point, surely. And and her family comes from Mexico, which makes her a perfect candidate for joining. That's where we're really trying to target that intersectionality of all of our kids. Yeah.
That's great. Okay. I wasn't sure if there was if young scholars meant different things at different schools. It sounds like it means the
No,
same thing.
It does mean the same
But
thing.
it
Yeah.
also captures the intersectionality of those identities. Thank you.
You're sure.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much again for coming and presenting on the outstanding work that's taking place at Heath School. You're welcome to stay with us or move on with your evenings. We're now going to head to public comment. We have one speaker, Ms. Carolyn Thal, member of the Advisory Committee and Town Meeting.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, yes, go ahead.
Thanks. Luckily, I just tuned in to tune out because I do have to go over to advisory. Hi, Carolyn Thal. I'm a town meeting member in precinct 16 and a member of advisory. This was a really fun meeting to start watching. I love seeing Laura Cleve, who I've known since kindergarten with her amazing smile. And I used to be friends with Debbie Irving, who was your PD day speaker. She was a friend of mine from yoga. But sorry, I'm using up my 2 minutes. One quick thing, I understand Dr. Guillory is going to be doing an enrollment update. I don't know if there's going to be school level information in there. I'm just going to make my plug for the Baker School. I believe the report for October 1st from Baker was 671. I'd just like to note that as of today, Baker is at 681. So that's up 64 students from last year's October. But I really just wanted to share some thoughts that I was inspired to think about after attending last night a Brookline Shared Mobility Advisory Committee meeting, which featured an update on MBTA bus route improvements. And we learned from the MBTA representatives that Brookline is going to be enjoying a 47% increase in bus service as a result of proposed changes. However, South Brookline, which I represent as a town meeting member, which is experiencing unprecedented and extreme growth more than any other Brookline neighborhood, is not going to be having any changes or improvements to our one bus line, the 51 bus. As you might know, Hancock Village expansion is bringing 461 new housing units and 943 new parking spaces. So we're already seeing the impact of cars and traffic. And to my mind, inextricably related to that and the sort of how far behind we are in terms of infrastructure is the Brookline High School bus and access for students from the South Brookline area to the high school. Just some data on the South Brookline bus or the BHS bus. About a quarter of the school, 500 students, live far enough away from BHS to qualify for the district bus. Families must pay a fee of $400 per student, not per household, for the BHS bus. PSB currently contracts only 2 buses for high school kids. The 2 buses cost $180,000 per year total. This year, after student fees, the PSB budget line item for the 2 buses was $132,000. I believe that's 0.0009 of the FY23 budget. Because there are only 2 buses for BHS, the routes are very long and circuitous. For example, children in my neighborhood do have to be outside at 7:10 a.m. to get the bus, and school starts at 8:20. And of the 500 kids who were offered the bus this year, about 115 are taking it. So presumably that puts about 385 or so kids in cars. We're really seeing the car traffic in South Brookline. I might follow up by sharing a video that I took that's really shocking on my way home from dropping one of my kids at BHS and the backup of cars. So to my mind, I would really love to see PSB improve bus service for students in South Brookline. I know there have been changes to the service in recent years, but that was pre-expansion in the neighborhood, and it still wasn't really great. I think we need more buses, we need more reasonable schedules, and we would love some relief from the $400 per child fee. I think people would love a shuttle to the D line, which is a straight shot out of the neighborhood to the Chestnut Hill T-stop, which is then a short ride to Brookline Hills. So I just would love to put this on your radar as you begin to enter your budget season. I would love for the school committee to support South Brookline and other students who don't have great access to getting to the high school right now. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda is the October 1st, 2022 enrollment report.
So this evening, we have Ms. Megan Gainey, our coordinator of enrollment, to walk us through the enrollment report. I know she'll move through at a nice clip because some of this, most of this we saw at the Finance Subcommittee a little while ago, but we're going to update with the certified numbers now for October 1. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Megan.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm going to share my screen so we can walk through this all together. I'm very excited to give you the official V number that I know we've all been waiting for. Everybody should also have received the chart separately from the presentation as well for your reference. So hopefully it'll be a little bit bigger, so you'll be able to go through that in detail as well as you need to. Okay. I will do my best to move through this quickly because I know we're behind schedule. So we're going to review the numbers for October 1 over time. Talk a little bit about the projections that we had talked about last budget season versus our enrollment at the moment. And then we are going to analyze the summer churn patterns just to sort of get a sense of where folks have gone, where they have come from, and where the growth or losses may be from. And we're going to look at the cohort enrollment progression so we can see where our students moving through the different grades, how those cohorts have changed over the last 5 years or so to sort of see where patterns might demonstrate anything interesting for us. And then, of course, discuss some conclusions for you. So officially, now that we have fully certified our numbers with DESE, the final count for the school year is 7,060 students. So only 2 off from our preliminary numbers, which is, I have to say, quite astounding that they were so stable in our accounting. Very exciting for us here in the data people in the district. And of those 7,060 students, 4,973 fall within our pre-K to 8 range, and 509 students is our kindergarten cohort for October 1 as of this year, which we all know will continue to grow throughout the school year, but as our snapshot on October 1 presents us, 509. And our BHS cohort is at 2,087 students. And this chart here is showing us that dip in enrollment that started beginning in September of 2020 after the COVID-19 pandemic. Saw losses in all public education across the state and country. And over the last 3 years now, we are starting to finally see a sustained, not drastic, but sustained increase in our enrollment. And this is a little screenshot, if you will, of that chart, which you all have separately. But I wanted to pull out some pieces for you here. Our total early childhood programs as of October 1st is 257 students that we report officially to DESE. However, because of the way that works, students who are aged under 3 years old at the time of reporting do not count. So there are 10 additional students who we are responsible for and care for every day that did not get counted. So I wanted to make sure to point out those extra little guys that we take such good care of. And then at our elementary level, we have 4,716 students, excluding those early education students. And I've pulled out here each school's total. All of our schools have pretty much seen an increase from last year, with the exception of the Pierce School. And that is intentional because we have right-sized the Pierce School over the last few years, making it now a 4-section school in anticipation of our building project and partnership with the MSBA, where we are to be a 4-section school. So the overall number has gone down simply because we redistributed those sections so that it's appropriately sized for where it should be. And at BHS, we have that 2087. And between our elementary school and our high school, we have 6803. In addition, we do have our out-of-district students who are reported separately. So those 56 are not included in our 7,060 students. And when we report 56 in that separate report, there's actually more than that. We actually truly have 74 students who we are financially responsible for. However, there are 6 students that we cost share with other districts because of custodial relationships between parents. And we only report them in alternate years. So we had a bunch that we did not get to report this year. And then we also have some students that we have confidential settlement agreements wherein we reimburse the parent rather than pay for the placement directly. So those are also not formally reported. So take that for what it is there. And then,
all right, Megan, can I ask a question on that last slide before we move forward?
Sure, happy to do my best.
Well, I'm just trying to understand if this is a state requirement or if it's just us as to why we don't count those 10 early childhood children and then the out-of-district students. To me, it's all PSB, right? And
well, so that's why it's included here, right?
Right,
so
but it's not included in
is...
all students, and to me, they're PSB students. So I'm just curious if that's an us thing or a state reporting.
Yeah, so that's a state reporting thing. So that's why the 7060 is the reporting number. We do report our out-of-district students, but they fall under a different sort of reporting structure from what I understand, not my exact area, but they kind of go through a different avenue of reporting. And then those students who are under age 3, that's just simply how the reporting structure works for DESE. So I felt it was really important to include those extra 10 students in our representation here for your review and to discuss that factor. And we always present our out-of-district students in this chart annually for you as well. So this chart here really is the snapshot of all of our students that we're responsible for.
I guess I understand that. I think it's more of a, like for me, a values statement on who's a member of PSB. And you know, if it were me, I would report that we had 71 and change, right? 7,100 and change of all students.
Right. So that's simply just how the reporting works. It's that's not our choice as to how those numbers get reported.
But it's our choice as to how we report them to the community, I guess is what I'm saying, to our community.
Correct, which is why they're presented here on this chart. I agree with your value. I very much do.
So Megan, could I? Oh, are you done, Val?
Yeah, I don't think that we fully agree, Megan, or the number would be different, but
I think there may be the issue of reimbursement per pupil reimbursement. And I think DESE sees their role as 3 and above. Whereas, below 3 is EEC. And so they don't want to reimburse us for the 10 kids that we would get. And if I had to guess, that's the reasoning. That's all I had to say.
Again, I think that makes sense, Helen. It's just, I think when we talk to families, right? Like, I think when we talk to families, not when we talk to DESE, but when we talk to families, those 10 plus whatever that 56 number really is, to me, are PSB students. That's all I'm saying. And so
Yeah.
our total of all
I can
students,
see that.
our
Yeah.
total of all students that we project to the Brookline community, to me, should include those other folks, right? Like, we're including METCO and other programs in here with different funding arrangements as well. So I'm not quite sure why this is different, but I will take that offline. I just wanted to make a point on that.
I agree with what Val's saying.
All right, go ahead, continue.
Okay, thank you. So here we're looking at our June to October enrollment patterns. We presented a similar slide last year, and we did want to bring that back for you again this year, just so we could sort of see where things are going. Typically, our enrollment in June at the end of our school year is higher than our October 1 number, which is important to keep mindful of, in that Brookline's numbers do not stop in October. They are always growing. We did see that aberration in the March 2020 COVID pandemic, where we saw those deep losses of enrollment by the beginning of the October 2020. Last year, we saw an increase, which was great. And then this year, what we're seeing is more of a flattening. So no deep decreases. It's about 19 students difference. More in June, less in October, which is more of our typical pattern, but much flatter than usual. And Linus and I have discussed that moving forward, as we sort of move into the budgetary season and things like that, we're going to really be looking at a variety of inflection points, not just this June and October, but we'll be looking at September, October, January, April, and June to really get a better understanding and be able to present to you and for your review what our typical trends across the school years may be, and how we can consider where we are at exactly at the moment in our recovery, if you will. Helen, is that your?
I have a question because I'm trying to make sure I understand this. It's the blue is June, let's say, of 2019.
Yes.
And the orange is October of 2019.
Yeah, so the following school year, but same calendar
Why
year.
wouldn't we do October to June? October 2019 to June 2019. So it would be like the 777 to 7819.
Right. So it's there.
I mean, it's there. Yeah. It just.
This is a slide that was presented last year, so I just kind of left it in the same.
I get it. I get it. But I was just trying to get it in my head because what we're looking at is the growth.
Yeah. So you can see the
and
orange.
This sort of shows the downward trend. Whereas if you put it the other way around, you see the growth every year.
Yes, exactly. So we should not anticipate that 70-60 will remain there. We will the history tells us we will go higher throughout the rest of the year. And we'll take a look at the different points to see really where that peak may be. May not be June, maybe January rather than June in the long run.
But you understand what I'm trying to say. You may want to think about redoing this that way.
Okay.
I think it might be more informative is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Does anybody else have any questions about this slide before I move on?
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I do want to talk a little bit about the enrollment range forecast methodology before I move on to the next slide, where we really look at where did we land in comparison to our projections. So during the budgeting season last March, we created, or not we, the former director of strategy and enrollment, when she prepared the report for everybody, put together 3 different models of projections. One is considered the low range, and that's the single point projection. So that's based on our historical progression rates over a 5-year average. We did exclude the 2020-21 school year because it did mess with the statistical modeling because of the significant losses. Every other year bore out, so that year was an outlier. And it does also include the standard statistical modeling of additional students to be added due to new housing developments set to be occupied during the FY23 year. The source of that was our town planning department, and it included 134 Babcock, 21 Crown and Shield, and Hancock Village, the units that were set to be occupied. It does also assume BEEP enrollment at 300 students across the board, and it includes special programming students at the high school, the 18 to 22-year-old students. It presumed that at 24 students. The mid-range option averaged 3 enrollment indicators on top of the single point projection. And those factors were accounting for the withdrawal of newcomer students in 2020, the decrease of English learner populations from 2019 to 2021, and then new registrations of newcomer students between January 21 and March 22. So sort of that churn of our students coming from outside the US and those who were identified as English learners. The high number in the projections is from our Cropper-McGibbon forecast. In this case, they assumed BEEP at 252 and 19 special programming students. The projection you'll see on the next slide has been aligned to match the others with a 300 BEEP student projection across the range. And this try method, if you will, was designed to allow us to plan for a best guess forecast while remaining sufficiently staffed to respond to the potential for a larger number of students if and when they should come. So that's just a little background about what the numbers were that we were using. And the last 3 years are also included here. So our 7,060 students exceeds our low single point projection model. And our K-8 numbers are actually closer to the midpoint projection, including those English learner and international student population returns, while the BHS number is a bit closer to the low single point projection. And I did want to spend a little bit of time discussing the BEEP numbers, because we have 257 and we projected for 300, and we discussed this a bit at finance, and Helen was very helpful to remind us of one of the very important factors. And then Margaret, our principal at BEEP, has also been very helpful in providing some context to this that I think is really important to keep in mind. One is that the age of reporting is 3 years old, as we discussed. So we have those additional 10 students. So it's, if we want to think about it as our true community of students, we are at 267 as of October 1st. There's even more now as we continue to enroll BEEP students. We do have to maintain open seats for students aging into special education from early intervention throughout the year when they turn 3 years old. So we obviously cannot start the year at our maximum potential of 300 students. We need to leave some room for growth. We also did have a reduced preschool classroom placement this year. And that was due to lack of families preferring certain locations. And by extension, not just for preschool, but locations and extended day are a key deciding factor for folks deciding to or not to enroll in BEEP in particular this year. over 114 families either declined or withdrew from the BEAP program because of the lack of extended day programming available, or not receiving the location that was most desirable for their family. And then last sort of factor is financial aid availability does have limitations. So all families who submitted an application on time during the enrollment period last winter who needed financial aid were able to receive that support. However, anyone who was put on the wait list or applied later or arrived to Brookline later also is on a wait list for financial aid support. So those families who would like to enroll are not always able to do so without the assistance of financial aid. And obviously on a budgetary end, we only have so much to offer. One tiny factor was the readjustment of the age of admittance to BEAP. We went from 3.6, I believe, to 3.9 for the age of entry in September. And that applied only to 28 students who applied and were not able to enroll because they were too young this year.
Megan, we have a question for you.
Yes, please.
Megan, this is Mariah. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but something you just said surprised me. Is it possible that we have seats open in BEAP and people on the wait list who need financial aid who aren't being admitted?
I believe that may be the case.
Okay, maybe we'll ask Margaret just to be sure. Thank you.
All right, please continue.
Okay, thank you. So this is a little bit of information about where our students have gone and those who have come anew. So the chart on the left-hand side, if you will, is the current year, has a little bit more granularity. It's telling us a little bit about the students who have departed from PSB and reported that departure during the summer period. And the key points that I just want to show here is that the majority of students leaving PSB did so to go out of state. They left the town of Brookline and the state of Massachusetts, in fact, altogether. And quite a few also transferred to in-state public schools, meaning they moved to other municipalities. Last year, the majority of a proportion of students moving to private school was on parity with those moving out of Brookline. And this year there's a significant imbalance. Far fewer students left PSB to go to private school, not an insignificant number at 97 students, but comparative to last year, it was a significant difference. And the number of students moving to homeschool programs went to 2. And last year, I believe it was something like 19 or 25, if you included those who retained their special education services with us. Overall, the right-hand column in the blue is last year's numbers as well. And what we're seeing here is that the net gains and the losses were smaller this year, right? So there were only 58 net gain students. So that number is smaller than 85, mathing and all. But that means that fewer losses were not reported during the summer. Fewer grade levels saw losses. So you can see the greens and the reds. The reds are losses, net losses. And last year we had far more net losses and at larger sums in each grade level. Again, fewer students making those choices for private school or home education plans. In addition, for the new students arriving, the number there is also smaller. One thing that I can say is that our kindergarten pre-registration during the spring was much more robust this year, with families maybe being more secure in their choice to join PSB sooner, or having more secure housing settled plans for their family. Perhaps it's more confidence in joining us earlier, and our outreach efforts were able to be more robust also. And the next point I wanted to show is the students, where they're coming from, where have they arrived to PSB, those students who are new. So as I noted, fewer students were joining us from kindergarten. That's that orange bar each year. So you can see last year there were 171 of our kindergarten students, which was a smaller class also than this year. So we did a lot of kindergarten students last year. This year there were only 50, which is much smaller. And the proportional increase of what we're going to call international students, meaning that their most recent school experience was in a school outside the United States. That has increased, and it was nearly 50% of our summer registrations this year. And then a slight increase in students returning to public education from private schools. I can't guarantee that all of these students were previous Brookline residents. They may have been attending a private school and residing in Boston, moved to Brookline and decided to join public schools. But those who are returning to us are joining us for the first time and choosing public school. That proportion did increase a little bit this year. And then because of the volatility, shall we say, of the last 5 years of our enrollment, I thought it would be interesting to take a look and share with the committee a bit about where our students go as they move through their grade cohorts. So this chart is a little backwards visually, okay? So our kindergarten classes are at the bottom of each level for that year. So the 2023 kindergarten classes down at the bottom in white, last year's kindergarten classes at the bottom at 501 in white. And you can go across and see our current 12th grade students, our graduating class, started out at 550 students when we were recording. The following year, they lost students. The year after that, they lost students in their cohort, and then they lost students. And then they gained 2 from the prior year, and then they gained another 5 from the prior year. So the fact that we see losses year on year is not unusual in our cohorts. It's interesting to see that, maybe 4th grade is a very strong year for enrollment. That's a year that families are commonly going to have their students in PSB. We often see as students approach middle school that they do leave PSB, and sometimes they rejoin us back again for high school. But of course, the big years of loss here from the COVID-19 pandemic, you can start to see how those cohorts have changed over the last couple of years. And you can see that the 22-23 school year, we are seeing those cohorts with more increases from the prior school year than losses. The 9th grade, 3 students is not a significant change. Our 6th grade cohort, however, went from 480 students down to 467, which is an interesting change. And our 4th grade cohort also saw a pretty significant dip. That one I don't quite know why or where, but it's definitely seems to be something of note. But overall, the movement is towards positive trends with increases or just marginal losses in most grades. And we're learning that losses within a cohort year over year is normal as students age, even in 2019-20 reporting year, which was the PSB peak. That was the 7,777 DESI reporting year. So in conclusion, overall, the key points here is that our total enrollment is higher than what was reported in this using the same methodology to DESI in October of 2021. Our projections, which accommodate for a bigger B cohort for growth. So we have to keep that in mind. That 300 is sort of a target goal, which we keep open for future part of the school year. And then mobility and churn really still remain important data points for PSB. Fewer students withdrew over the summer this year than last, so less volatility there. And then fewer kindergarten registrations were completed over the summer due to better outreach and better parent confidence in choosing the public schools earlier. And then the positive observations and trends that we've noticed is that the international students are returning at a higher rate than last year, and most cohorts are seeing an increase in students in comparison to prior school years. So if anybody
All
has
right, thank you very much. Are there any questions, comments? Helen.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you, Megan, for putting this together. I know this isn't easy and it's a lot of work and very informative. So thank you for that. I had just two comments, one comment and one question. The churn issue is a very interesting one, how basically we maintain our population, but almost a school goes and comes in a year. I mean, if you look at it sort of in that way. The other piece is that you said there was less churn this year or last year, and I think this year. And
yes, the stability was much higher this year. In terms of that summer period, we did a little less, I did a little less enrollment, but we also did a little less withdrawing of students.
So I would venture to guess once the international students come back more, you're going to have more going and coming.
Yes, we would anticipate
same numbers, but more
because they may come, that the families who are here will also have the opportunity to return back, and that normal PSB sort of cycle will pick back up again, which is the exciting stuff. We love that.
The other question that I have, and I think you may have this, I know we have the information somewhere, you may not have it, certainly not today, but it would be interesting to know the percentage of students in Brookline, who live in Brookline, who go to either parochial or independent schools.
Yeah, so that report is done annually in January. So that number will be something that we'll be able to take a look at. You think this takes a lot of work. That report is a lot of work to go track down all those
students.
kids.
I know, I remember at one point getting that information.
So I anticipate that we'll be sharing that information at some point in the winter time to take a look at.
If I could ask you to, if it's possible, while you're doing the graphs and everything, to divide it up into parochial and independent. And the reason I ask that is I see them as very different reasons for choosing something different than Brookline. We can't provide, nor do we want to provide, parochial education. But the other types of education that independent schools provide, we would. And so if my memory serves me correctly, the greater majority of students in Brookline went to parochial schools, but I'm not sure. So it'd be interesting to see that.
That I don't know off the top of my head. We'll have to take a look when we get the data.
I remember I used to look at it because it was interesting to me, both Jewish and Catholic parochial schools.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, a question I have: to what extent is there a consideration of a soft redistricting via attrition by using buffer zones in determining placement for kindergartners as sort of a means to try to relieve pressure at schools that have higher enrollment levels and perhaps backfill schools that do not have that same kind of capacity issue?
I'm not quite sure I understand 100% the question. Do you mind reframing it just slightly? So I want to really make sure I understand your question before I answer.
Sure. So some schools clearly have some higher enrollment than other schools. There are more capacity pressures at some schools compared to other schools. So to the extent that kindergarten placement can be used as a means to try to correct for that somewhat, are buffer zones being utilized in that manner? Is that exercise already underway?
Always. Yeah, that's exactly how kindergarten placements are made. And we do them in batches. So we look at them at different time periods of enrollment. So even if you apply on the first day and there is a pressure point at, let's say, Rough and Ridley, you may not get to go to Rough and Ridley if you live in that buffer zone, if there are no other mitigating factors.
Sorry, is that what you were asking, David, or were you asking about redistricting of buffer zones?
Were you asking about the use of buffer zones or the redistricting of buffer zones?
A little bit of both, but I think that the path of least resistance, because obviously redistricting would be painful on a lot of students, but if it can be done by attrition and by kindergarten placement and also placement of students who are coming in from private schools or from other districts, then perhaps it can be accomplished in that manner without disrupting any current students' placement. Because looking at this data, we see that at Baker, for instance, it looks pretty full, but there are other schools like Driscoll and Heath where some grade levels are pretty light.
Yeah, and I will make a note that, Baker is at 672 students as of October 1st, but 2019-20, they were at 762 in that 2018-19. So if we're looking at that school, that was the same facility
They were at
4 years
over
ago.
800, maybe a couple of years before that. So
Yeah. So
which wasn't great,
there's-
which was much worse, but let's just in comparison.
Yeah, in comparison, it's much less full than it used to be, actually. But yes, that is exactly how my office uses buffer zones, is to try to prevent pressure points where they may be. And they're done grade by grade, not just, Baker's looking full. It's Baker's 4th grade is looking full, and Heath's 4th grade is looking more of a better opportunity to reduce that pressure point, because that's where our family is zoned for.
Andy?
Are the buffer zones as currently drawn adequate for your purposes, or like if you could start over, would you draw them differently?
Oh, I think about that many times. I have the map in my office and another one outside my office, and I look at that map every day, and it depends on the day. I don't know, if you're asking my opinion, I don't know how it will go when we are able to open a 4th section Driscoll with the buffer lines drawn as they are. We will obviously work with them as they are and as we're directed to do so. Are there some opportunities perhaps for the future to take a look at and see where our pressure points may be and where the population is? Yeah, probably. Our school sizes are different than they were when those lines were drawn with the new construction of Ridley, Driscoll, and then hopefully Pierce.
Can I just ask Helen or anyone else who's been on the committee for a while, what's been the process of drawing those district lines previously?
Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to talk about. So it's a complicated process. Part of it is the availability in each school and the size of the school, but part of it is the topography of Brookline. That, on a map, it looks flat and it's easy, why aren't we moving these kids there? Well, if you think about a kid trying to get to school, for instance, from, the most northern part of Brookline, that buffers between Driscoll and Ridley, the kid would be walking past Ridley to get over to Driscoll. So it's a complicated thing. I think, we do have open enrollment to schools with the permission of the superintendent, who looks at obviously the numbers also. But we've done there were original buffer zones back when, actually the first one was when Ridley was overcrowded, and we buffered Dexter Park between Ridley and Lawrence. Then after that, the next iteration had to do with Baker and Baker being overcrowded. And so then we, and Baker is very difficult to buffer because it's not close to anything, so Heath and Lincoln were the most obvious ones. I mean, there's just so much you can move. You can also offer parents the option, and I think that happens at times, or has happened in the past, where we've offered parents the option. Look at, you have a kid in Baker who's in 4th grade, and this is the size here, but you could have a class size of that X at this other school if you want to move your child there. And sometimes people take it up, they're driving that way to work, that's a convenient place, whatever. So it's complicated. The answer is, Stephen, to your question is it's extremely complicated. The latest iteration of it, we actually I think Rebecca Stone was involved with this. I know she was the one that was doing it, together with the GIS person whose name I'm blocking on right now.
Jed Fernbach?
Yes. And so they had pinpoints for each child in Brookline and tried to do the buffer zones with that in mind, with the topography. They drove around. So it was a very complicated process. Is it perfect? Probably not, but there's a lot of options. And I think that's the important piece. Driscoll buffers with 3 schools right now, with Runkle, Pierce, and Ridley. And the other thing is the shifting around. So you have, I'm sorry, I'm probably going into way too much of this for people who, I don't know, Stephen, if you really wanted to know all this, but if you think about it, the Ridley, Lawrence, Driscoll, Pierce, and Runkle, and to some extent Lincoln, are all so close that you can sort of move
that
things
helps a lot,
around.
Helen.
Huh?
I guess I just wanted to know if population density shifts ever triggered any kind of formal process, but I do get that it's complex and has a lot of factors. So thanks,
I
Helen.
think the
appreciate
way
it.
it stands, you can do that certainly without redistricting, but without rebuffering. I think it works. And sometimes we'll do a street or two that might change.
Mariah?
I just wanted to say that the map that exists now, that's been in place for 10 years, I don't think you said this, Helen, but the buffer zones were expanded dramatically to avoid future redistricting, sort of to have to wiggle it around. They're just really, really big now. And so that allows for Megan to have a lot of flexibility in placement. And I just wanted to say that as a parent, when we unenrolled for the better part of a year to do some international travel and came back, we were told that we were not guaranteed our previous school or even our district so I just want to say Megan and it was Mike at the time, they held the line. We ended up back at Pierce, but they were like, there's no guarantee you'll even get your buffer school. So yep, they're really trying to slot people into the question you had, David, on where there is truly capacity.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, well, thank you very much, Megan. That was extremely informative. We will now move on to BEEP facilities planning.
All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Megan. Next up, we have Margaret Eberhardt, our interim principal at BEEP, and she is going to walk us through some visioning that also includes setting up for facilities planning. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Margaret.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Guillory, and thank you everyone for welcoming me this evening and for inviting me to share a little bit about our vision and our hope for BEEP. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on, maybe. I want to start off the evening by saying that I have the privilege tonight as the interim principal of early education in Brookline to speak about BEEP. But I sit here tonight representing over 100 educators, specialists, teachers, and paraprofessionals who work on behalf of the district's youngest learners. And I would be remiss if I didn't speak about them. And I would be remiss to not thank Erin Herney and Rachel Crigan, who are our program coordinators for the 6 sites of BEEP, and Saladin Wise and Lisa Marie Pedro, who are the heart and soul of our BEEP Central over there at Clark Road. So it is in that spirit of inclusion that I begin our presentation this evening. Every conversation we have this year starts with this wonderful fact that BEEP is 50 years old. We are celebrating 50 years of inclusive education in the public schools of Brookline. BEEP started in 1972 It grew out of a research grant funded by the Robert Wood Johnson and the Carnegie Mellon Foundations. It started out as a partnership with the Newton Public Schools and Boston Children's Hospital. And it has continued to grow and flourish for 50 years, half a century. That's an amazing accomplishment. And I congratulate the community, I congratulate the committee, and every person who has worked on behalf of the Brookline Early Education Program. It is quite an accomplishment for sure. We're going to talk a little bit about, we are the BEEP Friends. We're going to talk a little bit about our enrollment, how it looks today, and also the facilities, and thinking about a vision for BEEP as we move forward. So here we are, BEEP enrollment. We've been talking with Megan. I just want to thank Megan for her partnership. She is an amazing partner, really helping us to be more online, to be more, in the 2022 process with families. So we actually have 271 students currently enrolled in BEEP. They include every child, whether you are 3 or not, currently enrolled. We are projecting to be over 300 before the year is finished. We ended last year at 311 students. So keep that figure in mind. This tells you a little bit about our demographics. 39% of our students have individual education plans, meaning that they receive services for special education in BEEP. If you recall, we are both a general ed and a special ed program. 39% of our students are English learners or dual language learners. We have a culturally and linguistically diverse program that is fantastic. And 15% of our students receive tuition-free seats. To answer Mariah's question, and we can go back to this later on, we do not have students sitting at home waiting for enrollment at BEEP. Enrollment at BEEP is a complex, complicated process that you'll see in a few minutes. We offer seats to children. Sometimes they cannot make it work because of location, lack of extended day for their family. So that's one of those pieces. And I'll remind you all that last year, when we had open seats remaining, we offered those seats to rising kindergarten students who were not placed yet in an early childhood program. And we will have those conversations with the committee as the year goes on. I just want to talk a little bit about the enrollment application process, as Megan alluded to. We do still have 16 available tuition paying seats across the program, in addition to the ones we are holding for students that will come up from early intervention. We work daily on looking at those seats that are available and offering them to people who apply. Every day, people are still applying. Every day, we're contacting people who apply who are interested in being a part of our programming. We did change the age of enrollment from 2.6 to 2.9. 2.6-year-olds are toddlers. They are not preschoolers. That is the definition from the Commonwealth. And you cannot attend extended day programming unless you are 2.9 or older. That is the qualification for the Department of Early Education and Care. So we need to align our programs with our partners for extended day. 104 families did decline our offer or withdrew their acceptance, and mostly is because of the lack of extended day or the location that they wanted. We could not have offered them. This chart shows you right now what BEEP looks like across our 6 locations. You can see on the top the public schools of Brookline spaces that we're in, and then you can see the leased spaces that are on the bottom. And you can see where we have extended day and where extended day is not offered. I want you to keep in mind the number of 23. We are thinking of holding our enrollment at 23 classrooms as we move through and think about the vision and the future of BEEP. You will notice that we closed one classroom at Putterham for a lack of interest in enrollment. That was for the preschool age. And we have one RISE classroom on hold as a teacher resigned and moved on, and we needed to hire a new educator, and we are planning to open that classroom in January of 2023.
Margaret, for Runkle, there's one classroom listed under the total, but none under the 3 breakdown categories. So what type of classroom is that one?
It's a pre-K classroom.
Pre-K, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's 1. We'll fix that on the next one. Yes, it's 1. We only have 1 pre-K classroom. 3 preschool classrooms are at Lynch, at Beacon, and at Clockwood.
Margaret, do you mind just holding on this slide for 1 second?
No, I do not. Please,
Okay.
I can't see you, so you need to shout out. I can't see anybody.
Just got a lot of info, and I just want to look for a minute.
Yes.
Thank you.
While you're looking, Mariah, can you, Margaret, can you break down for us roughly the ratio of the declines by who declined by a lack of extended day and lack of location
Those are the
suitability?
majority. Those are the majority. I would have to like, literally, we have this spreadsheet that's.
No, I mean, is it
all-
mostly lack of extended day or mostly lack of suitability of location, do you
It's
think?
both, actually. Like, we only have one classroom at Runkle. If we had two classrooms, we could have filled that. Right?
If you had two classrooms, you could not have filled that.
We could have, yes.
You could have
We had
filled
children that were siblings of previous students, and we had a lottery system because we had so many, you couldn't fill more. We only have the one classroom, so you have to go with what you have at that location. Yeah.
Okay.
So it really does come down to, for many, many families in Brookline, that piece about an extended day, that need for a longer day that goes beyond 12:15. It's really crucial in thinking about the vision for BEEP as we move forward.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome. Would you like, may I move forward now, or should I, any other questions right now? No? Okay, great. Got it.
Actually, I just have one question. Sorry, if you might
Go
go back.
ahead.
Why was the preschool section at Putterham closed?
We just didn't have enough families of that age interested in enrolling at Putterham. We do have a full house at Putterham for our pre-K enrollment, but our preschool classroom was very small there. We had less than 5 students interested in enrolling. And at the time of conversations with admin and finance, they did not think that would enough students to sustain the program.
Thank you.
And that, I'm sorry, Margaret, that was district-wide. We couldn't get 2.9 to 3.2-year-olds to Putterham.
That's right. There was lack of interest in that particular location for that age.
Interesting. Thanks.
But not for the other ages, mind you, right? So it was an interesting dynamic to have happen to us for sure. All right, so I just want you to keep this, this slide may seem out of place, but it's very crucial to our conversation as we move forward. We are going to open our applications on December 1st. We will run through December through January for families to apply. The applications will close on the 15th. On March 15th, we will send out letters of acceptance to families. The reason that I'm pointing this out is because as we think about the future of BEEP, we are always thinking a year ahead, right? We are always planning for the next year. So right now we're thinking about next year. This time next year, we're going to be thinking about 2 years from now. And so as we think about this vision and plan for BEEP, this is a crucial component of the thinking process, the thought process.
Margaret, I have a quick question on that.
Yes.
And it came to me as I was looking at this. Why do we wait 3 months to let parents know? Is there a reason we couldn't let them know by the beginning of February or middle of February?
It takes a while to actually run the lottery, to look at what we allow parents to choose any location, and then you literally have to go through application by application by application. Okay. And you have to create class lists, and you have to consider all of those things. It's a laborious process, and so you have to have enough time to make it work for families. And that's the key. And we aligned this used to be a different enrollment period. We aligned it to align with other early childhood programs and private preschools so that we would be competitive in that regard.
Right. No, I was thinking if we did it sooner, we'd be more competitive. But
we might. That's a really good question. And maybe we can think about that as we move forward. So last year, the school committee and Dr. Guillory asked us to start thinking about a vision for BEEP. If you think about the future, what do you hope for? What do you wish for the early childhood program of the public schools of Brookline? And so we're boiling down the vision to one basic statement, right? We want to reestablish our BEEP inclusive classrooms in public school of Brookline spaces. That is what we are hoping for. We want to optimize learning experiences for children and families and align with the district's values of high achievements, educational equity, and, as Dr. Guillory said before, respect for diversity. When I think about our day on Tuesday, when Debbie Irving talked about the narratives that children establish at young ages, there is no better narrative than BEEP. BEEP is neurodiverse, it is a multilingual, diverse learners, inclusive programming. That sets the narrative for this district moving forward. So that is our goal. Our goal is to figure out a way to reestablish our inclusive classrooms in public school of Brookline spaces, to be a part of that wonderful presentation that our Heath School gave before.
Margaret?
Yes.
Sorry, back to that vision.
Yes,
when you
sir.
say the spaces, you mean in the actual buildings,
That's right. I'm
in
talking
the
about
K-8s?
all of our buildings, including the high school. And we will get to that
Okay.
conversation as we move through, but that's right.
Do
Correct.
you envision one in each, or
I think that, so I don't have that kind of specific detail. I
but
think
just
that that's
integrated into the K-8s?
correct. From the K all the way to the high school. We were at the high school once too. And I think that those are conversations that the committee and the district needs to have with the community as well. So let's take this. So we have been talking at site council, at PTO, and with parents in general about what do they hope for? What are they thinking about for BEEP? And they talk a lot about physical convenience. This is a really big part of being in Brookline. You want to walk to school, you want to ride your bike to school, you want to be a part of the community that you live in. And being part of existing schools is ideal for parents. I was at Florida Ruff and Ridley yesterday, and I loved seeing the older kids drop their siblings off in Debbie and Rachel's classrooms. I loved being on the playground and seeing kids come running over to their pre-K teachers that were in 3rd and 4th grade. Like, that's a really wonderful experience that you can't put a value on. And the truth is that parents talk about having a longer day. Our 8 to 12:15 model is outdated. If we were a school day model of 8 to 2:30, we would be very attractive to families. We would reduce the need for an extended day, and we would be able to really situate inclusive learning in a longer day. And of course, we need to figure out how to make extended day available to all families. When you talk to BEEP staff, when they come to us at faculty meetings, they really want stability and location, right? Where their classroom going to be from year to year. We are a nomadic program right now. We moved often in the last couple of years, and we are looking for some stability. We are looking for a home. And they also talk about how a full day school day would really optimize inclusion experiences. 4 hours and 15 minutes is not a very long time to maximize the multidisciplinary experiences of a BEEP program. But so how do we get there? How do we get from where we are right now? When you go back to that first slide, we're at 8 Public School of Brookline spaces and 14 lease spaces. It's really essential that we look at BEEP not in isolation. We absolutely have to look at BEEP in the context of all districting program needs. So that's why following Megan's presentation and looking at enrollment is a crucial part of this conversation as we move forward. And thinking about the special education needs of the district, because BEEP is a general education program and a special education program. We need to collaborate with school leadership, the principals, about when we fold BEEP back into PSB spaces. That's another crucial part of this conversation, because we want to be included and we want to and make them feel we're all part of the same community. We need to increase that access to extended day. And we really need to think about changing the length of BEEP stay. These are some of the things we need to think about as we think about the future of BEEP. So here I'm looking at for September 2023. The most exciting thing on this slide is Driscoll. We are going back to Driscoll. There are 3 BEEP classrooms in the plan for Driscoll. We met with the Driscoll team the other day for extended day with Megan, who runs the program there. She couldn't have been more welcoming. She couldn't have been more excited about the thought of pre-K coming to Driscoll. So we are going to increase the number of PSB spaces next year by 3 at Driscoll. That will think about moving some from Clark. We will continue to have our classrooms at Putterham and at Beacon. Remember, holding steady at 23 for the current time. Allowing ourselves time to plan, because while we're thinking about this year, we need to be thinking about the next slide.
Margaret, can I ask a quick question? So which are the 3 that are, since you're staying steady at 23, which there's 2 going from Clark, or where is the 3 getting deducted from, since they're getting added?
If we have 6 classrooms at Clark.
Okay, so that's just 6 to 3 there. Okay.
Correct. And we don't know yet. I shared this presentation today at our administrative meeting with other administrators, and there were questions about we don't know yet which classrooms those would be. Will it be a preschool? Will it be pre-Ks? That's a conversation that we need to have as a program and really look at the enrollment once those numbers start to come in, because having inclusion spaces for preschoolers is really crucial. Not having that preschool right now at Putterham sort of impacts the inclusion experience when children age in from early intervention. Like, where can you place them if there's no preschool class for them to age into, right? So those are the kinds of things that we have to think about. We used to have preschool at Driscoll when we were there before.
I just wanted to say, because you mentioned it too, that having Driscoll extended day, providing the extended day for the Driscoll. That's really exciting. So
It's so exciting.
congratulations.
I mean,
Yeah.
Matt and
It
I went to the
doubles the
meeting.
PSB sites that will have extended
Yeah,
day. That's
she
wonderful.
was incredible. She's already talked to Noella Hearn. So it was a very uplifting conversation this week when Matt and I met with Megan over at Driscoll. Of course, we were on Zoom, but we still met. It was wonderful. So let's now keep in mind that we're going to have to start thinking about 24, 25, because that year is a critical year in terms of spatial. So let's go there. We are going to end the Clark Road lease in 24, 25. That means that whatever remaining classrooms are at Clark will need to find a new home, along with the 10 BEEP staff that work there, right? So you can see on the chart, it says to be determined. We haven't determined anything at the moment, but we do know in our planning that we are going to need to find spaces for those classrooms, right? That's why having time right now to think and plan with district leaders and school principals is crucial to the success of this vision for BEEP.
And Margaret, while this isn't part of your presentation, this notation about Clark, Margaret focused on the BEEP footprint there, but remember that we also have a number of other district staff that domicile there, so that's part of the larger plan. So as we, this is the conversation about not becoming myopic or siloed as we think about these opportunities. So Margaret is giving it to us from the BEEP perspective, but as the committee, we need to think about the other staff that live there too.
Yeah, I think it's around 48. I think that's how many people it is.
Margaret, it's Suzanne. I have a question.
Hi, Suzanne. Yes.
Yeah, just clarifying. When you talk about extended day, are you talking about a day that goes until 2:30, or are you talking about a day that goes until 5 or 6?
So when I talk about extended day, I talk about a day that is after a BEEP day. So right now, our program runs from 8 to 12:15. Extended day is from 12:15 to whenever parents pick up. Usually there's a 3 o'clock pickup or 4 o'clock pickup or a 5:45 pickup. When I talk about extending BEEP's day, I talk about thinking about making BEEP's day a school day from 8 to 2:30, like all of our other, oh, sorry about that. I don't know what that is. What about like all of our other programs, right? Like that's what I'm thinking about, like being like the rest of the district.
And have we cost that out, what that expense would be?
I do have that, and I think that's probably a conversation for another time, right? Like I definitely think that we have cost that out as a program for sure. Yes, we have.
Okay, thanks.
And Margaret, I think it's also important to note that we do have some BEEP classrooms that are on the 2:30 schedule.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Dr. Guillory. Yes, I'm very remiss in telling you that we do have our RISE and comprehensive programs already go till 2:30. So we have some idea of what it looks like for a BEEP program to be a full day program, and how much that, some of those teachers and paraprofessionals are already part of an FT that's greater than the rest of the program. But we've been spending a lot of time in-house thinking about the cost of that.
So I'm sorry, I don't think I fully understood your answer to Suzanne's question.
So
extended day on this chart, does that mean that students can get picked up at 5 o'clock or whenever the regular extended day program at that school?
That's right. Extended day is an extended day. It's like any other extended day program in a K-8 building run by another entity, extending the day beyond the school day.
Okay, and then, I mean, the 2:30, I understand as your vision for where we want to get, and that will obviously involve negotiation with BU and other things, but.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Exactly.
Thank you.
No, those are really great questions. Thank you so much for helping me remember that, Dr. Guillory.
Just to be clear, the extended day at Driscoll that you're talking about is the extended day that the rest of the kids also attend.
That's correct. Yeah. Right. Yes.
As opposed to the Yes Schools for Children, which is a private entity that comes in and does it.
Right. So the programs that are at Lynch and at Potterham for BEEP currently are run by a partner, a nonprofit partner called Schools for Children. And they run programs that go from 12:15 till 3 or 12:15 to 5:45, depending on a parent's preference. At Beacon, we work with the Trust Center there, and they run a program that they bring Beep children up to their program in the afternoon. And then Noella Hearn, who's the Heath Extended Day Director, runs the program at Clark Road. So we've had some great partnerships in supporting families' need for a longer day.
And one other question, and when you talk about the longer day till 2, the same as the regular elementary school day, are you including the inclusive preschool age group too?
So that's a really great question, Helen, that I think that would have to be something we would actually really have to think about, right? I mean, there's lots of, I think it's possible. I think it's totally doable. Our preschoolers who are in our comprehensive program, they go in until 2:30. They then do their additional learning in the afternoon. So I think that those would be structural and logistic conversations that we would have as a program. To think about that piece, right? I do think it makes it easier, to be honest with you, if everyone is on the same schedule, and makes things so much more workable for families.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The next few slides just are a little more narrative, where then they are table-wise. Oh, sorry, I don't know why it's not moving. So as we think about 2025 through 2027, we really need to think about that we must have a presence in South Brookline. We need to continue with that Porterham lease, because until there can be some alternate spaces found in South Brookline, as the presentation noted, Baker is pretty full school. Is Baldwin a possibility for Beep classrooms? Is that something that might come online for Beep? That's a conversation for the district as well. And can we reestablish our Beep classrooms along with some space for support staff back at the high school? For the longest time, we had space at the high school. And in fact, if you go on some state Commonwealth websites, our address for Beep is Greeno Street. Right, so that's how long back it goes. So that's that would be lovely to be back at the high school with early childhood programming, for an opportunity for students to learn about being educators and to build that pathway for students. We've had some great success with that as well. And then we are really looking forward to, perhaps in 2027 and beyond, those 3 additional classrooms that are part of the renovated Pierce model. And when I close my eyes and I think about the absolute best possible imagining for Beep, I think about us sprinkled out into the buildings, pre-K to 8, and the high school, with the Lynch Center being our central home, place for our administrative team, for our intake team, for our Parent-Child Plus, for our play groups, a resource center for parents, along with 2 or 3 classrooms at the Lynch Center. That is our hope and our vision, right? We are looking to be part of, not separate from, the incredibly wonderful spaces that are part of the K-8 and high school program in the public schools of Brookline. And I've been talking a lot at you, so if you have questions, I can stop sharing, or I can go back to any slide you want. I'm happy to entertain any thoughts you might have. And I want to thank you for listening to our vision.
Thank you very much. Mariah, go ahead.
Margaret, when we asked a couple months ago for you to come up with a vision, I couldn't have asked for a more amazing vision to come before us. I'm so happy to have this kind of clarity of thought and really compelling vision for what Beep can be in the future, and grow on all the amazing things that have happened so far. So I just want to say thank you. I mean, this is serious work and planning and vision, and it gives me such hope to be able to think that we'll be able to really, I think, be able to speak with one voice and a clarity of purpose as we think about how to advocate and to make Beep move ahead over the years that you've articulated. So just thank you. I'm really grateful.
Mariah, I have to thank the educators of Beep. There are many educators in our program who've been here a long time, who were at different spaces, who really helped me to see what Beep was and could be. And the partnership I have with everyone who works in Beep has been amazing. And I'm grateful for that support. I'm grateful for their help in figuring this out. And I'm really hopeful for the future of this program. I think you all should be so proud of the 50 years that you have sustained and grown this program. And it is a testament to your commitment to all of the things that are important that you value as people who fight for education in the public schools of Brooklyn.
In 1984, when I was a BEEP student, I was planning for this day. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Stephen?
I completely agree with you, Mariah. Margaret, I was sitting here thinking, first, I completely support and agree with your vision, but I also don't think it's just a BEEP vision. I think it's part of a PSB vision because it really adds a lot of value, I think, to what PSB offers. And I was also thinking about the upcoming Pierce override, for instance, and how we're being asked more frequently to explain how it is that we claim the lion's share of finances from the town. And I think it's incumbent upon us to be opening our schools to the broader community. And I know this is 2 years and it's the same constituency, it's the same families that will be going to these schools afterwards, but I think it's in the right direction. I think we should be looking to provide services in the buildings to broader groups, and that includes families of 3 and 4 year olds, and hopefully in the future families and other community members that can have adjacent services in the schools. I think it's good for us to be looking for opportunities to open up the schools to provide services that relate to schools. That's what the building should be used for, in as much as we can do that. So when opportunities like this come along that are so obviously synchronized with the vision of an actual program, you're doing a lot of the work for us by finding a vision that squares with the PSB vision so neatly. So I mean, this has my strongest support, what you've articulated today. So thanks, Margaret.
Suzanne?
Yeah, thanks, David. Thank you, Margaret, so much. One quick question and then some comments. Are Metco students eligible? I know they're not in with us yet. I mean, is it possible for Metco students to be in a BEEP program?
Hey, we were discussing this after the Debbie Irving conversation when we were debriefing as a BEEP program, and we were talking about that. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah,
I
so
don't
they're
know
not now.
how that actually works. We don't have any MECO students in BEEP, but I don't know. I think it's just from kindergarten on at this point, but wouldn't that be an opportunity?
It would be a great opportunity. So that's my comment is, again, we keep talking about BEEP, which is a fabulous program, but kind of what Stephen is saying, I'd like us to think of it as a PSB program, and that perhaps we have universal, do I dare say this, universal.
I was supposed to mention that actually, and I forgot, but that would be
preschool for 4-year-olds, at least for 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
I just think that would be really a place for us to be a leader in the state. I mean, I know some of the urban districts have it. I don't know how many suburban districts have it, but I think it's time to think about that, having a universal preschool program that we take on. It's big, but I'd like us to think about it.
You have great allies and advocates on your committee, and in BEEP you have the full power of BEEP behind you.
I know we do. So maybe it's the time, Margaret. Maybe we can start getting that pencil out and making that work. Thank you so much for all you do for our young children.
Oh, thank you all.
Helen?
Yeah, so Margaret, thank you. Thank you for this terrific report and vision. I think we can all be really proud that 50 years ago, Brookline was at the vanguard of thinking about early childhood education and inclusive education. That was before 766, if I'm not mistaken, right?
You are pioneers. You are definitely.
I mean, it really, we were on the vanguard, and I think the program has only grown better and better over the years. We've been very fortunate. I mean, we have Mariah, who's a graduate of BEEP.
I'm a BEEP alum as well. I went to the one at Pierce.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you out.
Yeah.
But I think that Suzanne, I mean, it's something, what we need to do is get the state to start doing it. The way we went to full day kindergarten was through grants that helped us to get over the hump. Yep. And the same thing I think is true for 4-year-olds. I think our program is so strong that MSBA did not question whether to pay for the classrooms for BEEP. So That's an important piece, just that people know. So thank you.
Andy?
Yeah, going back to the wish to bring BEEP back into the other public school buildings, just from an educational point of view, would you prefer that they be distributed evenly, or would you prefer that they be clustered in a few schools? Like if you could go around and just take 9 classrooms from the district at will, would you prefer to do, one in each school, or would you prefer to have, say, 3 schools, each with 3 BEEP classrooms?
I think for the purposes of the families who live in Brookline, that having them dispersed supports the families better. Of course, having them together in a space is lovely. I mean, Clark Road has been like a gift. Having those 7 classrooms all together, 6 classrooms all together has been lovely. I do think that families look for location, that convenience of location, and the desire to be in the same spaces if they have other children. Is really important to families in Brookline. So I think I would have to take that into consideration. We as a program, as a district, would really need to consider that as an important factor. That means a lot to families, that convenience of location and being with their other children if they have them.
Even if it meant possibly just having 1 BEEP classroom in the
Yeah,
school,
I mean, I know
being
it's
kind of
not
isolated that way.
I mean, in some ways it can be a little isolating, but I think our teachers who have been in those situations have done an excellent job of working, and we have a structure that can support and still feel as if you're part of something. And at Runkle, Donna is amazing. Donna Finnegan, the principal there, and her support team are amazing partners with BEEP. So I hear what you're saying, Andy, and I'd probably have to give it a little more thought, but I'm thinking more from a parent perspective right now, probably than from that principal lens, actually. So yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jennifer?
Hi, Margaret. Thank you so much for this. It's Jennifer. I wanted to just say that I really love the idea of getting BEEP back into our PSB schools. I remember when BEEP was at the high school, and it not only is a great opportunity for maybe location and for families and for those students, but it also can help support some of our programming at the high school, which I think you sort of referenced about some of the pathways that we have at the high school. I'm a big fan of the idea of stability of location, and getting these. I sort of am a little bit in alignment with your idea or your potential thought about distributing classrooms across schools, just because it becomes almost like a feeder pattern into those schools. And if you have siblings there, so it just seems really natural. And I think I'm the biggest of all of the items. I'm the biggest fan of the longer day. That is an extremely limiting factor for families. And I know when we moved to Brookline, I heard about BEEP and I was like, that's awesome. I want to do that. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. There's no way my work schedule will allow me to participate in BEEP. It doesn't function for a lot of families. Not that it's an awesome program.
No, I hear you.
I want to be clear. Like we just couldn't participate because of those limitations. So I think that I'm a huge fan of trying to figure out a way for us to make this a full day program, as it is a complete part of the PSB program. So thank you for this. This is great. And I just want to say my entire time on the school committee, I've been listening to, I would have to say, I really feel like I need to shout out Helen as a constant advocate for early childhood education the entire time. And we've been having conversations the entire time I've been on school committee about getting BEEP classrooms, stability of location, and back into the school. So I'm really excited about this forward progress. So thank you.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much for that presentation. It was excellent. And as you can see, you have a lot of support from school committee for this vision, and we look forward to charting a path forward together.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Guillory, for
David,
the opportunity.
Can I just ask one more question? Margaret, I think you answered this, but I just want to make sure I understood. There is no one on the waiting list. Okay.
So as we get applications, so for instance, we got an application today that pertains to this conversation. And when I was talking to the team today, I said, so the next conversation will be with school committee and with the district about what other additional spots might we have. Like we did last year, if you recall, we enrolled more students as the year went on when spots were still available. And that's the next conversation that we need to have as those students apply and become more known to us as a program.
Because one of the things that I think confuses is you label them as 16, and I'm going to put quotes, tuition paying slots. And we
Right.
say tuition paying as opposed to spaces held for students with IEP.
Correct. So
But-
there are, yeah, sorry.
But they're
I-
not really tuition paying if we think about they are also
Right.
financial aid eligible, correct?
They are,
Okay.
that's right.
So
And
it's
that-
not like
and
we're
that-
holding out for someone who has
No, no, no,
money.
no, no, no,
Okay,
no.
I just,
Yeah,
because
that-
yeah, the terminology can be,
Yeah. I
yeah,
just
maybe
try
we
to
should think about
distinguish
updating that.
yeah.
I hadn't thought about it before, but it's exclusionary unintentionally.
You're
by calling it that.
100% right,
Okay.
Mariah. And I think that that's a really important factor that we hold them because that's part of like when we say we're going to enroll this many students, they were a part of that number in terms of the revolving funds. And then it's totally up to the discretion of the committee and the district how we distribute those seats now.
But in terms of like that you had 40, sorry to belabor this point, Data.
No,
but
no,
important.
it's an important point. It matters to you.
But like, I remember that there was a discussion about having 40 tuition-free slots, and
We
those have been
we
used up.
filled all of those. Yes.
So is there something that school committee, like, you're not holding back on letting people in who are financial aid because you don't have authorization from the school committee, right? Like,
No,
you
but
don't need us to do anything?
Last year, we spoke to Linus and then the deputy superintendent of finance before we made those decisions. So happy to have that conversation with you and everyone else as well. Yes, we didn't just make those random decisions. We always consult with the district first.
So I'm sorry, how do we going forwards always have students who need financial aid get in?
Hey.
And I'm not asking you, Margaret, I'm asking the people at the
Okay.
table, sorry, just to be clear, like, what is the vote we need to take so that they don't have to come back to us to let these students in who are otherwise sitting at home without a program?
Well, I do think we need to know what the numbers are because obviously it has to be financially feasible. We want to encourage that as much as possible, but we need to know, are there 300 more who would want to, or is it 20 more?
Well, she
So
just
to
said
that-
she
so
has
that-
16 spots tops, right? This is all, the only slots that are left are 16 slots.
Okay, but to that point, you also mentioned that 15% of BEEP students are currently tuition free. Can you tell us, or do you currently know offhand what the number is of BEEP applicants who need financial assistance within the last year, for instance?
I think we had around 70 or something applicants, but remember that people don't come to us. Like we offer them the spot, but they want a full day, or they have a voucher and they want to go somewhere else, or they stay where they are. I confirm at that number for you. That's the number I have in my head that I remember, but I confirm out how many applied and then how that played out over the course of the application and acceptance period.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I absolutely can do that. We have all of those numbers in that very immense chart that we have back at.
So I think what we would do is look over those details and see if we can expand from 40 spots to something higher.
But, okay, so I'm going to say this again. There's like literally, imagine there's a 4-year-old sitting at home right now who's not going to preschool because we haven't offered them this spot. Like talking about future, blah, 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 blah. What is there something we can do like now so that Margaret has the authorization that she needs to go ahead with this decision? Or do we say that this is in the superintendent's control to authorize this in the same way he authorizes umpteen other expenses across the year relating to a whole bunch of, these are all small dollar item things. Like our budget is shifting all the time. So how do we make sure that these students who are vulnerable students are getting the services they need as soon as possible without fixating on whether it's 3 people or 5 people? And it's also keeping in mind that these slots have almost zero marginal impact. We already have a teacher in the classroom. The question is whether there's 10 little bottoms in chairs or 11 little bottoms in chairs. So like, I guess I don't want us to like calculate things and fixate on ratios and whatever else. I want us to think about how we get this to happen.
No, I agree, but I think there are two separate issues. So there's the immediate one that you're talking about, which I feel that the superintendent should have the discretion to make those adjustments in consultation with BEEP. And then there's sort of the longer term planning about whether it should be 40 spots or 50 spots. And
Well, there's a different thing, which is, are we need blind and accept everyone? Do we even prioritize people who need financial assistance over that? But so do we all agree? Is there any, I don't even know that we can take a vote or whatever, but do we all agree that Linus has the discretion, that Margaret doesn't need to come back to school committee like she did last year to increase the number of tuition-free slots from 40 to some amount greater than 40?
I would certainly be in support of that. How do others feel?
So it seems to me that Linus and Margaret are responsible for making sure that we keep within a budget. And if whatever they can do within the budget that they already have, I think makes sense. And so I think that, they can manage this. I think if we try and micromanage this now, it's too complicated. They understand the sense of the committee and what we want to have happen.
Well, I think Mariah's question was more if there's some kind of procedural impediment to
I want to
carrying out that
minimize the
exercise.
procedural impediment because I
Yeah.
think people were fixated on 40 and I'm saying, forget the 40, do the right thing. Let's just make sure that like everyone agrees this isn't something that needs to come back to committee. This is something they manage just like they manage umpteen
For
other, to
future
your point,
years,
Helen.
too. For
Yeah,
future-
I mean, well, I think that there's in general in future years, yes, I think that there's a policy about the order, or maybe it's a procedure about the order of operations in which we accept students, but that is a different issue and can be dealt with separately from if you have students who are here now who are tuition free, accept them into the program, even if you're past some theoretical cap. Okay, so that's good. We're on the same page, right?
Don't you already have that authority though? Like to take on students who need tuition?
They have a limit of 40, which was increased from 20, and I'm saying we should not cap it.
I agree with that. I mean, if the budget can accommodate tuition-free students, is there any reason that should be impeded? Has there traditionally been?
No.
Margaret?
Right, what's the
No.
rationale for the cap?
They've been trying to work within the financial constraints they've been given. And what I'm proposing is that we don't make this a constraint.
If by removing the cap, would that present you with other difficult options? Like, would you feel compelled to take on additional students at, for instance, would you weigh that against the consideration of some other expense that you might prefer?
No, I think we worked very well last year with Dr. Guillory and admin and finance to make those decisions. And I think that's just where we're at the point. It's now November and looking at what we want to do going forward. I feel very comfortable understanding the revolving fund, understanding the revenue coming in, understanding what we've committed to in terms of expenses for educators and other expenses, and working with Dr. Guillory and admin and finance to move your vision forward. So absolutely, I will work with the district to make that happen.
And I would move to remove that cap and to have
How
this
is the
be at
cap
discretion.
currently codified? Is it written down somewhere, or is it just an understanding in people's minds?
I don't think it's codified in some sort of thing that we have to vote to remove it. I think that's why this discussion is clarifying.
Okay.
It's been a practice, and let's change the practice so that there's not this need to come back to school committee to get permission to exceed that
Right.
theoretical
What is
cap.
codified is the budget. So that has
Correct.
to,
I don't even know that
one
the-
has to work within that. and
I
then-
think that the budget is every single day, the balance in the revolving fund is different, like I guess, and all of those things. I don't want to speak out of turn, Linus, but I'll just say that a budget is a plan that starts on July 1st and then rapidly devolves from there as things go on, right? This is just the reality of like everyone else's, debit card. If you look in your Bank of America account, what's happening, right? Things change and we adapt. And so if this is something that we as a community prioritize, then we adapt to make sure that as there's increased need, we address the need. And so 40 is probably a theoretical guess because they're budgeting. Okay, well, we think we might get 40, but it shouldn't be treated as a hard cap. It should be treated as an estimate for budgeting purposes.
Then I think Margaret and Dr. Guillory here
Yeah,
are the
good.
intentions of this group.
Thank you.
It's interesting. I think that the poverty level in Brookline is similar to the 15% that we have of tuition-free students. I'm trying to look for the number exactly. And it's around there. So I think, I don't think there's a heavy lift to get to where Mariah wants to go to, is what I'm trying to say.
Helen, I think you're presuming that the population of, if that we are being, you're presuming that the population of Beep mirrors the overall population of Brookline, whereas you might find that a whole bunch of people are going into private programs. We don't know that for sure.
No, I'm looking at there was a report done by the Brookline Community Foundation. On
No, I remember at the
understanding
Understanding
poverty.
Brookline. Yeah.
Huh?
It's the Understanding Brookline report. I'm just saying that the Beep population may not mirror, but it doesn't matter.
I think there's an understanding now that school committee supports allowing Beep and Dr. Guillory to exercise their discretion in adjusting the number of spots for tuition-free students, and that the 40 number should be used more as a guideline for budgeting purposes, but not as a hard number.
And that perhaps what we do is every single year, we look at the number of actual financial aid students we had for the previous year and use that as our budgeting for the next year going forward, so that it reflects our sort of best and most recent estimates of where we are with the number of students who need financial aid.
Yes, that sounds like a good plan.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for this presentation. That was very helpful, Margaret.
Thank you so
Ar-
much.
All right, so now we will move on to school committee actions, amending the Public Schools of Brookline policy on face coverings, second reading, possible vote. The updated draft was intended to incorporate the comments from our first reading. So you will notice that in the first paragraph, there's a mention of some language that was suggested by Helen and others regarding that we strongly encourage mask use, and that the public schools of Brookline are mask-friendly environments. Also, in response to Andy's comments the last meeting regarding having some school committee review, in the last paragraph, I added some language that in the event the superintendent elects to implement mandatory face coverings, the superintendent would need to present the rationale for that decision, as well as any subsequent discretionary amendments within 14 days to the school committee for its review. And its review does not mean for affirmation or for a vote, but just so that we're aware of why a certain decision was made. And if the school committee were to choose to go in another direction, we would have that right, since policies are one of the areas that fall within the authority of the school committee. Jennifer.
I'm sorry, can you just clarify the language that was added at the beginning? Did you say strongly encourage mask wearing? Is that what it says?
Strongly encourage voluntary use of face coverings.
All the time? Like,
No,
what
when they're
context?
No, when students, and I'll read the exact language.
Okay.
The PSB are mask-friendly environments that strongly encourage voluntary use of face coverings when students and staff are or may be sick with airborne viruses or trying to protect themselves and others from those who are or may be sick.
Thank you.
Students or staff who know that they are significantly ill should not attend school, because of course we don't want to be encouraging people to come to school when they're knowingly sick, even if they're going to mask.
Thank you, David, for the clarification. That the context is very helpful.
Any other questions? No? So would someone like to move policy? Thank you, Jennifer. Is there a second? Thank you, Mariah. Stephen, your vote? Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah? Andy?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. All right, so now we move to subcommittee and liaison reports. Helen, capital improvements.
Yes. So we met yesterday and actually had a very spirited discussion about the repair and maintenance budget, going over last year's budget, what's planned for what has been done and what's planned for.
Helen, spirited means we had an argument. Spirited is a nice way. We didn't argue. We had a lovely conversation, right?
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
my spirit is a positive spirit.
Well.
I did not mean anything by that. I can use another adjective or adverb. We had a very friendly and great conversation about the budgets, and also talked with Charlie. He presented his request for this coming year, which is quite a bit greater than what we gave him last year, which had also ARPA monies included in there. So we thanked him and understood his rationale and for requesting what he was requesting, both with inflation, with the difficulty of getting workmen and difficulty of getting contract people to come and do the work. That being said, we also don't know what our budget is for next year and what that will look like. And if anybody wants to, we have the slides and we should probably share them with the entire school committee, Robin, if you don't mind. With regards to projects, Val, I don't know if you want to talk at all about Driscoll, where we are.
Sure. Where we are. We think mostly on time, although we're getting a little bit tighter with time, and that may change depending on a couple of variables with materials and with potential change orders. We are working diligently with our OPM to make sure that they are pushing the GC and all the subs to make sure that they are working to the greatest capacity while the weather is good, and making sure that we have enough subs on site to get the work done in a timely fashion, and also pushing our OPM to get us to the budget numbers that we've been quoted on, or as close to those as possible, and looking at alternatives if certain things are looking not feasible at this juncture. But we're really, the moral of the story, I guess, is that we're really pushing on the OPM to make sure that we get as much done before the cold weather sets in as possible.
And just from the building commission on Tuesday, it looks like they're planning on having the building closed up by January.
That's the hope, yes.
If not a little bit before that. And, so some things are moving very quickly and some things not as quickly as we might like. Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something more, Bill?
I just said thank you. No, that's great.
Okay. The high school is, this last part has been a struggle, getting the third floor done and done well and done in time. It's not on time. It was supposed to have been done for September. We're now in November, and I think the completion date now is talking about December. So that we can thank Susan Ditkoff, who's been working diligently with the contractor and the OPM to try and move things, along with the building commission yesterday, who also made it clear that we need to move things along there. There's still to be done next summer, the street work around the high school. Charlie has filled in, as we heard yesterday at the meeting, some of the things that weren't in the scope of the original budget, but needed to be done at the high school, maintenance type of things or some repairs, has been doing a great deal of that too at the same time. Pierce School, we have a meeting on the 14th with MSBA. This is a small staff meeting with the two co-chairs to go over with MSBA our submission and hear about their number for, once we've given them our information and in the way that they've requested it, and assume the number that we're going to be getting as a reimbursement. But tomorrow will be the first time that we will, or not tomorrow, next week, will be the first time we'll hear from them as to their response to this, along with any other questions that they might have. So far, things have been going very well with them, and we're very pleased.
Helen, when would we get official word that it's okay to hold the town vote in May?
So that's, I think I will bring that up on at that meeting to find out how we go about doing this. I think we have to request it. We've already requested the first delay till December for the meeting and that's been approved. But now I don't know if we do request it after they've approved the project. You know, it's sort of like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? You know, do they have to approve the project first before they can give us permission to move the debt exclusion? You understand?
All right, Mariah, you have a question?
I thought that Heather said at Town School Partnership, which you weren't at, Helen, on, was that Monday or Tuesday?
That was
I don't know,
Monday.
earlier this week.
Monday.
Monday, that MSBA had already approved it
No,
officially.
they-
She said
they-
officially approved it.
She has a letter?
I'm just repeating. I did not ask her to like wave the letter at the Zoom screen, but she said officially approved it. So it might be worth checking to see
I
if
may be
something has
wrong,
happened.
maybe I
Yeah.
didn't, I wasn't kept.
Or she misspoke. I don't know. But anyway,
I know that
I
she
thought
met with MSBA, with Jack McCarthy, the executive director. I know he verbally said that that would be possible. I do know that they try and work with communities to be able to facilitate, you know, if communities need more time for a vote. That being said, I don't think that we've gotten any official response. You know, that it's gone through the processes they have to do. So
My understanding is that the official response would need to come through the full MSBA meeting, which is not until December. So there's some verbal assurances, but I don't think it's official yet. But I'll double check with Heather to see what it is that she may have received.
thank you. Yeah, that would be important.
Anything else, Helen?
No, I think that's a lot. Thank you.
All right, certainly is.
David, could I ask Helen a question?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Suzanne.
yeah, Helen, it's Suzanne.
Yeah.
So, you know, this conversation certainly at the meeting last week about the increase in construction costs across the Commonwealth. And there was some speculation that perhaps the state might reevaluate the percentage or the amount of money that they will kick in. Are you
That is
hearing that
right.
at all?
So I haven't heard anything. I do know there was a meeting that Matt went to with MSBA with a number of other communities talking about the increased costs just from the time that they put out their stuff to bid and then getting back the bids. Many communities are facing this. It's not clear to me, but there does seem to be some extra money now in the state that with the Fair Share Act passing that I would hope would be directed towards this issue. But I do know that all communities are facing it. What they, just to explain the way they work, they keep the per square footage at a lower level so they can get more schools. They can have more money to give to more schools. They're a pay-as-you-go organization. It's not like they pay out over 20 years. They pay their part right as, well, at the end of the project, you know, or as we're going along. But they like to be able to have more schools get some money rather than some schools get more money, if that's clear. So that's why they've kept it lower. I mean, a point of fact, when Devotion at the time, when it was Devotion, went to MSBA, we got approved, like at the meeting that we hopefully will get approved at in December, the same day that they raised the per square footage reimbursement level, but it wasn't retroactive to us.
Exactly.
I can't hear you guys. I'm sorry?
We just said let them vote the increase first, then approve us.
Yeah, well, that isn't what they're gonna do, I can assure you, if that's the case.
All right, that brings,
I do think with enough communities suffering like this, they may look to find more monies in the state.
all right, that brings us to curriculum. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, we had our previous curriculum subcommittee meeting on October 18th. There were two significant items that we were discussing. One was a review of FY 21-22 MCAS tests and trends. There is a recording available of that meeting that we really went into some depth. that's available for committee members, but my other question is if there were members of the committee that were not there that would like to see some of that conversation come to the full committee, please let me know, like speak up, and we can coordinate with Dr. Guillory and the chair to get that on a future agenda item. So if you feel like viewing that or that you want to have a fuller discussion at the full committee, please let me know and we'll facilitate that.
I think, was there a school committee meeting where you weren't at, Jennifer, previously?
Oh, yes.
I think we brought that up previously, and we suggested that does come up before the full school committee.
So can we put
Sorry
that
for
on
not-
the
sorry for not
docket
reaching out.
preview list then?
Okay.
Yeah, that came up from the school parent leader discussion. They had specifically requested an update to the community on that.
Oh, good. So there is, so for, in the meantime, there was meaningful discussion and a lot of information with explanation and sort of the really interesting part I thought was the conversations that the district has obviously been in a lot of, I don't know if you call them webinars, I don't know, conversations with DESE, who has provided a lot of information and background and understanding about the test, the nature of the test in the last few years in the pandemic, and how you can and cannot compare sort of data across that. And so it's really, there was a lot of interesting information that DESE also provided to round out that conversation. And then, of course, looking at the trends within our district specifically. So I'd like to request that we add that to an upcoming docket. But in the meantime, if people are interested, there is a recording of the curriculum subcommittee meeting. Again, the date is for October 18th, if people are looking for that. We also had an initial discussion of the introduction to adolescence curriculum. So if people are interested in that particular topic, that is also on that same recording. Again, I'm not going to necessarily go into a lot of detail right now. As an initial discussion, there are changes in the curriculum. The district is examining and considering, what we're teaching and how we're teaching it in what parts of the curriculum and different age-appropriate years. And so they're just in the beginning conversations of that, and we're not at a decision-making point, but this is more information sharing. We will not be meeting in November because we are looking to include items in the full school committee agendas instead of meeting in November. So this is in sort of the vein of conversation that we had at our workshop, where we'll be looking to move larger items to full committee. We will, however, be holding our December subcommittee meeting. That is the plan right now. And just sort of forward looking in January, we'll be looking in our subcommittee meeting to be looking at high school course catalog changes, as we usually do that time of year, to coordinate any feedback and votes, referral votes to the full committee, and then the full committee voting, so that can be in time for the catalog. I think that's everything for now.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Any further questions for Jennifer? All right, that brings us to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. Val?
Sure. So I've been ill for a couple of months and we haven't met. But so I want to thank Andy, first of all, for moving the staff portion of the equity policy through the policy subcommittee. And we are meeting December 5th, where we'll discuss the new MCAS requirements through an equity lens and how that will potentially impact diverse learning populations.
All right, thank you. Mariah, finance?
We're meeting next week, and the plan is to review the budget book structure for the upcoming budget year. Just to, if you recall, last year we had 1.0 and I think version 1.1 we called it, basically some incremental changes, but we're going to review it as a subcommittee and make sure that there's nothing else that we'd like to see before the budget book gets fully developed. So other suggestions to make for refinements this year. And I'm not going to report on accounts payable tonight.
All right. Suzanne, government relations?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Fair share amendment, question 1 on the ballot passed. So we are looking forward to additional money from the state.
When does that take effect?
January 1st.
2023?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, I mean, it'll be that year for the
following year.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for the taxes for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also save the date in January. I forget what it is, Robin, but a
January
legislative.
9th. I just
January
looked it
9th.
up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just save that. Thanks.
All right, for policy, we will next be meeting this Monday at 5 o'clock. We will be reviewing primarily the aforementioned staff equity policy. Also, we will be taking another look at the staff vaccination policy, given the feedback that we received at the last school committee meeting. Are there any additional liaison updates? All right, seeing none, is there any new business? Jennifer?
Sorry. Part of the conversation that we had at the curriculum subcommittee, and I'm pretty sure that's where it was, they want to talk about absenteeism. I'd like to talk more about that. I'd like for us to think a little bit more deeply as a committee about what's happening. And this is part of what's happening across the state. And I don't have data larger than that, but we did have some data from DESE that indicates trends across the state, but also within our district. And so I'd like us to really think about in a post-COVID, or what I would like to think is post-COVID or post high crisis, that we think about what are the moves that we are making to make sure that students are in school and having access to education, safe places and meals, and for just so many reasons. And our primary goal of education, to see what moves we can make to decrease our absenteeism.
To that point, do we have information on what our current attendance looks like in Brookline this year? Is it up? Is it down? Is it fairly constant compared to previous years? Okay.
It was part of the report that Gabe delivered in the curriculum subcommittee, so I'm sure he could pull it out.
Okay.
Yeah, there's data, and they have data from last year, data from this year. There are some trends, but we could get a better update, and I'm really interested in sort of like, what are the action items, knowing the data that we have, what are our plans?
Broadly speaking, did that data reflect that attendance has been declining?
Attendance has, yes, and across the state. So this is something that was happening during the years of pandemic, remote learning, hybrid learning, and then we're still seeing, and we're seeing last year. So this is something that we need to, I think that we should really be addressing, because the numbers of cumulative missed school days is concerning.
Okay.
And in that presentation, it was also disaggregated by race, and there were some interesting findings there as well.
Yes. So I think maybe that can be part of the conversation, and maybe it would work well in the conversation if we're having this MCAS data and the trends particularly come to full committee, if we could incorporate a deeper discussion and action plan on the absenteeism piece.
All right, sounds like a good idea. Thank you. Helen?
But, one thought I had about this, I mean, I think it's a really important subject, but it might be best to do that in curriculum first, to sort of get a better understanding of it, and then bring it to the full school committee, because I think there's a lot of getting into the weeds there of understanding it, as a suggestion.
Can I respond?
Go ahead.
The only reason I was thinking, well, I think everybody's going to want to be part of that. And one of the things we talked about at the workshop was sort of trying to not have too many duplicating presentations, but also to make sure that everybody had access to that information if they weren't able to attend a subcommittee meeting. So that, and I just think this one is so significant, and in some ways different than previous experiences that we've had in the district about it. So I'm like looking sideways. This is so weird. I'm looking here and there, and like as if Helen's sitting there. I'm so sorry. I digress. It's late. Anyway, so that was my thinking about it after our workshop meeting, of like I felt like this was significant enough that we would probably all want to weigh in on that. But I hear you. Like I'm trying to think how we can use subcommittee time creatively. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I think we can leave it up to Leslie and Linus to try and figure out what makes more sense, what will be more useful to begin with, you know, or which way to go.
Okay.
That's with you, Jennifer.
So I'm going to propose now that we move into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for the following purposes. Purpose 2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, the superintendent. Purpose 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the body, Temple Ohabai Shalom and Temple Emmett. And purpose 7, to review and approve executive session minutes from October 27th, 2022, and we will return to open session following the executive session. So is there a second? Thank you, Suzanne. Your vote, Stephen. Suzanne.
Yes.
Mariah. Andy.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Helen.
Yes.
Valerie.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Mariah.
Yeah.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Stephen. Helen.
I guess so.
Valerie.
Yes.
And I also vote to adjourn. So we are now adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night.